Isn't time flying by? Would you please, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Would you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, would you please sign in? Holly?
All councilors present and a quorum has been declared.
Thank you. Next up, we have agenda approval. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
There is not.
Thank you.
If not, Mayor, I'll make the motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
Got a motion and a second on the agenda. Is there any further discussion? Start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Next up, we have citizen comment. Alamosa City Council welcomes your comments. Citizens wishing to speak may obtain and complete a speaker card through the city clerk at the start of the meeting. I have one card. Mr. Michael Patterson. Mr. Patterson, please step forward. Give us your name and your address if you so wish.
If you can push your button, the microphone will pick you up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Michael Patterson representing Kiva Apartments in Alamosa. And what I wanted to propose was a small change to the parking lot design on the Kiva Apartments on 8th Street with the goal of limiting access so that one, limited access, providing more security and safety for the people in the parking lots in the apartments. As was noted in a previous council meeting a couple of years ago, a second entry and exit was recommended to the south on Monroe Street. With limited access, we'll have less drive-through and walk-through traffic, and everybody will go by the security cameras at the entryway. We've had an engineering firm from Denver analyze the traffic and the parking access, and they made some recommendations on how to have better flow through the parking lot, which we would like to institute. So I believe you guys have that letter and the engineering design. And I'll take questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Next up, we have ceremonial items. We have the introduction of Streets Superintendent, Mr. Ray Smith. And we have our Public Works Director here. Thank you for being here, Pat.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight I have the pleasure of introducing Ray. Ray was hired by Pete Washek, who was our street superintendent for 20 years, that retired in May. Ray was hired as an entry-level maintenance worker in March of 1995 and has since worked his way through all levels of the street department hierarchy. And after a competitive process in June of this year, he was appointed to the superintendent position subsequent to Pete's retirement. Like Pete, he's responsible for all aspects of street department operations, including scheduling, employee training and development, and is heavily involved in capital planning and budgeting.
Thank you, Pete.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to work for the city. It's been a pleasure for 20 years, and I hope to continue on with that for quite a while. And I hope I can do you all proud. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Tell us a little bit about yourself and family.
Well,
kind of thing.
I've been married for 16 years. I've got 3 kids. My oldest is 13. I've got an 11-year-old and a 6-year-old. They're all boys, and so that keeps me busy when I'm not here.
Thank you.
I enjoy the outdoors a lot, hunting, fishing, and ranching. So
Thank you.
that's me in a nutshell.
Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to congratulate Ray for this promotion. Thank you for your service for 20 years. And just a quick story, today I was trimming my aspen tree and I got a little bit too crazy and it fell on a phone line. I freaked out and I called the city, called Pat, and he wasn't there, but they sent Ray out to check it out, and Ray helped me with phone numbers, and we got a hold of the right people, and within 10 minutes the problem was fixed. So he's a go-getter. I appreciate that. Thank you, Ray.
Councillor Daniel.
I too just wanted to say welcome and gosh, thank you for your service. It's fantastic that you've served the city for so long. So thank you so much for that. And I'm really looking forward to you in this new position. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Councillor Coleman.
Ray, I just want to say thank you for your service, congratulations, and I wish you much continued success.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Councillor Stefano.
Thank you for your service, Ray. Wish you many more years, and good job. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Appreciate your presence and look forward to seeing you out on the streets, I'm sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, we have the presentation of the Life-Saving Awards. Chief Oakes, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'll wait for the three to come up. So tonight I have the pleasure again to come before you and present 3 awards to the 3 that can be here. There's a total of 4 officers involved in this incident. One of them is Captain Mestis. He's on vacation, so he wasn't able to make it tonight. But tonight, again, we get to show the training and dedication that our officers have to the community and our citizens and visitors. A little bit about the incident. On April 14th, 2016, at about 3:37 p.m., Captain Mestis, Captain Anderson, Detective Russell, and former Detective Tyler Schmidt, who's in civilian clothes now, he's no longer works for us and is a business owner, they responded to an ambulance call at 1700 State Avenue in reference to a female subject who wasn't breathing. When they got there, they encountered the female subject unresponsive, and they found that she was in fact not breathing. They began providing rescue breaths and were provided information that the subject may have accidental overdose on an opioid prescription drug. You heard about the naloxone that we were recently issued, and through a program through the San Luis Valley Area Health Education Center. Once they received that information, Tyler Schmidt had his naloxone with him. He then administered the naloxone, and once EMS arrived, she was taken to the hospital. She regained consciousness, and the hospital acknowledged that their actions and the administration of the naloxone were instrumental in saving her life. My understanding, she was able to walk out of the hospital later that evening. So because of the combined efforts of all these officers, their training and their quick actions, like I said, it was instrumental in her life being saved on that day. This again displays the professionalism, dedication, and the training that we provide our officers, and they're truly represent our department professionally and our city professionally. So tonight I do have certificates for each one of them, life-saving certificate, and I also have a medal, life-saving medal, and they will wear the awards on their uniform when they wear their dress uniforms. So first I'll present Detective Jason Russell with his. Jason, great job. Thank you. Here's your certificate and your medal. Tyler Schmidt, and since he was employed, it does say Detective Tyler Schmidt on it. So Tyler, there's your certificate and your medal. Great job. Thank you. And last but not least, Captain Anderson. Captain, there's your certificate and your medal. Great job. Thank you. And also, Mayor, if I may, I could acknowledge that Sheriff Jackson showed up just for the presentation. The partnership that we continue to build and have is, we support each other, and he recently awarded some of his deputies life-saving awards that was in the newspaper as well. So, Sheriff, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Chief Oakes, and thank you, Sheriff Jackson, for being here. We really appreciate your presence. And gentlemen, I don't think words are enough to tell you how we feel inside about many of the things that you do on our behalf and on behalf of the citizens out in our community that really rely on you for just about everything, including saving their lives. Thank you for that. Councilor Grego.
I just want to make a couple comments. In times when seems that our police officers are being killed left and right, you know, and all they're trying to do is protect our citizens, you know, this tells you what exactly, how we're helping and taking care of our communities. And I just want to thank you so much, you know, for all you do and stuff. And I hope people are aware of this, you know, because it's wrong what's happening in our country with our police officers and stuff. So, thank you.
Councilor Stefano.
I also want to thank you for your service. These days, man, it's hard out there for policemen. People are disregarding law and stuff, man, and you guys hang in there, and you're doing a wonderful job. And a lot of people would just probably let that person die, man. So good job, and keep up the good work, because you deserve a lot of credit for what you guys do. Thank you.
Councilor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to thank you all for your life-saving efforts. Captain Anderson, Officer Russell, Detective Smith, your courageous efforts are greatly appreciated, not only by council, but also the community, and don't ever forget that. And I also would like to thank the San Luis Valley Area Health Education Center for their partnership in providing the medication that is good for situations like this. Appreciate your service.
Councilor Hensley.
So I also just want to echo what everyone else has said, and thank you very much. I love that actually there's the partnership between the police and the sheriff's office. And this is just, I know this is something that was great that you did, but you do things like this every single day. You're out there all the time, and the whole force is out there protecting us, so thanks again.
Councilor Daniel.
You just keep looking at me, Mayor. So I just wanted to say, you guys have heard it from all of us, but the fact that you're willing to administer the naloxone and be there and carry that on you, I know that that was a choice that each of our officers had, and I think it's an appropriate thing to have the choice. And so I really appreciate that your training, your willingness, and the energy that you put in every day to make our community safer is we can't appreciate you enough. So thank you for everything you did, and thank you for taking the opportunity to learn about the naloxone and use the AHEC to help us with that.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We next have a proclamation on National Health Center Week. Is there someone here to speak on this? Sir, would you identify yourself? And, oh, Mr. Roberts. I didn't recognize you.
Hello, Council.
Thank you for being here, sir.
Yeah, of course. So somebody was asked to come, and so I guess it was my turn since I'm the newest executive at Valleywide. So it's now National Health Center Week. I'm just going to read maybe a couple things off this proclamation. Would that work for you guys? For over 50 years, community health centers have provided high-quality, affordable health care in our nation's underserved communities, demonstrating that locally governed health care can improve lives while lowering costs. Health centers provide high-quality, cost-effective, and accessible primary and preventative care, including integrated medical, oral, vision, behavioral health, and pharmacy services to all individuals, regardless of insurance status or ability to pay. Health centers nationally employ nearly 170,000 people, including more than 11,200 physicians and more than 9,000 nurse practitioners, physician assistants, and certified nurse midwives who work as part of a multidisciplinary clinical teams designed to treat the whole patient. Health centers have worked tirelessly to grow the nation's primary care infrastructure to meet the pressing need for access to care. Yet the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention reports that 17% of Americans still do not have a regular place to go for health care, and that was in 2014. And that roughly comes to around 55 million people. So there's still some work to be done there. National Health Center Week offers the opportunity to recognize America's health centers, their dedicated staff, board members, and all those responsible for their continued success and growth since the first health centers opened their doors more than 50 years ago. During this National Health Center Week, we celebrate the legacy of America's health centers and their vital role in shaping the future of Americans' healthcare system. And so I'd like to say a couple things about Valleywide Health Systems. My name is Adam Roberts. I'm the new Chief Operating Officer for Valleywide Health Systems. I grew up in this community, so it's pretty great for me to move back to the community that I grew up in and do what I love. Valleywide has grown. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. I invite you guys all to our 40th anniversary barbecue on August 10th from 5 to 8 at Zapata Park. I think that's 850 Ross Avenue. So hopefully we can see you guys there. It's free to the public, it's free to the community, and it's just our way of showing that we're celebrating 40 years and saying thank you to the community. Valleywide started in 1976 with a very small budget of $130,000. Now we have 390 employees. We have an operating budget a little under $40 million. And we served a little under 40,000 patients last year in the mainly the San Luis Valley, but also the Arkansas Valley and Fremont County too. And we're looking to even expand into Chaffee County into Buena Vista this next year, hopefully. So.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And with that, I will cover some of the points that you didn't cover, and then I'll ask council to meet you down there for this presentation.
Sounds good.
All right. And National Health Center Week 2016. Whereas for over 50 years, community health centers have provided high-quality, affordable health care in our nation's underserved communities, demonstrating that locally governed health care can improve lives while lowering costs. And whereas health centers provide high-quality, cost-effective, and accessible primary and preventative care, including integrated medical, oral, vision, so on and so forth. And whereas health centers are locally owned and operated small businesses that serve as critical economic engines, helping to power local economies by generating billions of dollars in combined economic impact and creating jobs in some of the country's most economically deprived communities. And whereas health centers have worked tirelessly to grow the nation's primary care infrastructure to meet the pressing needs for access to care, yet the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports that 17.3% of Americans, or more than 55 million people, still do not have a regular place to go for health care in 2014. And whereas the National Health Center Week offers the opportunity to recognize America's healthcare centers, their dedicated staff, board members, and all those responsible for their continued success and growth since the first health centers opened their doors more than 50 years ago. During this Health Center Week, we celebrate the legacy of America's health centers and their vital role in shaping the future of America's healthcare system. Now, therefore, I, Joseph P. Lucero, Mayor of Alamosa, do hereby proclaim August 7th through the 13th, 2016 as National Health Center Week. I encourage everyone to visit their local health center and celebrate the important partnership between America's health centers and the communities they serve. And I will sign this and meet you down there.
Sounds good.
Next up, we have a proclamation in recognition of Bessie Konishi, and I believe Mrs. Greenwood, correct, is here to speak with us before I make this presentation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us all here tonight. It's already been very interesting. As president of the GFWC Women's Citizenship Club here in Alamosa, last year it was my great honor and privilege to nominate Bessie Konishi for the General Federation of Women's Clubs Jenny Award. Named after their founder, it is begins in the local clubs, and then the nominee moves to the state, then to the region, and then to the national, international level. And she moved along right up to the very top and was awarded, let's see, so it starts out with quite a few people, but at the very end there are 8 left in the country. So we were quite honored and proud of her for this award. And I will just read the actual narrative that went with her nomination. Born Miyeko in 1932 to Japanese immigrant parents in the San Luis Valley of southern Colorado, Bessie Konishi has lived through hard work, success, prejudice, joy, and heartache. As a schoolgirl during World War II, she and her sister once went to a local cafe. They were never waited on while people laughed and made hurtful remarks. Growing up was hard. In the 1960s, her oldest child, then in middle school, was told she could not belong to a club because she was Japanese. Bessie knew how that felt, so she took action. She found the Religious Society of Friends Green Circle program. It promotes intergroup relationships, and then she began presenting it to area schools, community groups, the local college, and junior college. So in 1966, when Bessie joined GFWC Women's Citizenship Club, she brought along her sensitivities to injustice, her interest in building community, her commitment to family, and willingness to volunteer to do whatever it takes to make things better. Through these many years, she has focused on GFWC's signature project, which is about domestic abuse and violence awareness, and local community service projects in many profound ways. She energized the club to raise money for an ARC for Heifer International, leading others to present the project to local service clubs. She chaired a fashion show dinner event for 4 years, raising $2,500 each year for scholarships to Adams State University and Trinidad State Junior College. She created our Pennies for Operation Smile project that demonstrates how quickly gathering small coins can count up. Bessie's latest success as leader of a 2-year fundraising effort for Alamosa's TUCASA utilized Pinwheels for Prevention to raise awareness of TUCASA's mission, which is empowering all children and adults to live healthy lives free of sexual assault and domestic violence. And this was done as TUCASA was remodeling their offices and adding a new child advocacy center. The club was able to donate $2,000, and cheerful, colorful artwork that gives everyone there a reason to smile. A few years back, Bessie was co-chair of a project to help with renovation and furnishing of Tucasa. Their 2 emergency shelter apartments. And even before that, she chaired a project in support of Adelante, a local nonprofit helping people get their lives in order. Club members chose to help a young single woman through her pregnancy and onward until she graduated from college. How rewarding this was. From time to time, she still lets us know of items that are especially needed by children and adult clients. Today, Bessie still presents her program, History of Japanese Americans in the San Luis Valley. It describes how unpleasant it was in the 40s to experience such prejudice and hatred. She and her husband, Ben, have 7 precious grandchildren, 6 of them biracial. She has taken all 7 to Japan to meet relatives and experience another culture, helping them grow in understanding. It's all from love. In 2016, this year, Bessie Konishi celebrates her 50th year as a member of the GFWC Women's Citizenship Club here in Alamosa, and continues to lead, assist, reach out, and mentor us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Greenwood. So with that, Council, I will read this proclamation in recognition of Bessie Konishi. Whereas Bessie Konishi of Alamosa has received the General Federation of Women's Club Jenny Award, and whereas the Jenny Award is a Medal of Honor given only to 8 of nearly 100,000 club women from across the country and around the world, and whereas in 2016, Bessie celebrated her 50th year as a member of the General Federation of Women's Citizenship Club, and whereas Bessie Konishi has worked exclusively and extensively to promote peace and end racism in her community, and whereas her commitment to her family, community, and the General Federation of Women's Clubs' mission of enhancing the lives of other than volunteer services shines through in all that she does. Now therefore, I, Joseph P. Lucero, on behalf of the Alamosa City Council and the citizens of Alamosa, recognize and congratulate Bessie Konishi for her continued success in receiving the Jenny Award. Given under my hand and the seal of the City of Alamosa this 3rd day of August 2016, I will sign this and we will come down and present this to Bessie Konishi.
Mayor, if I may say a comment to Ms. Kanishi.
Absolutely. Councilor Coleman.
Ms. Kanishi, I just have to tell you that I'm amazed and impressed with your commitment to serve. And I would like to thank you personally for your over 50 years of service and your ability to enhance the lives of people throughout our community by promoting peace. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Absolutely. We'll move on to consent calendar A. The consent calendar allows multiple actions with one motion. Consent calendar A contains routine items which have been recommended for action by staff or advisory boards. Council may remove a consent calendar item for separate consideration. Tonight we have 3 items: the approval of the minutes of the meeting for July the 20th, 2016, the CDBG Memorandum of Understanding with SLV Health, and the Alamosa County FAA grant. Councilor Vihil.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we approve consent calendar A.
I second.
We've got a motion and a second on consent calendar A. Is there any discussion, further discussion? Seeing none, start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
We'll move on to regular business, presentations from outside agencies. Tonight we have 2. We'll start with Ruthie Brown.
Thank you. I do appreciate very much being able to talk for more than 3 minutes. So I did try and type everything up so that I wouldn't ramble too much. And I do have a little bit of a cough or something. So thank you. And I think sitting there, I have to tell you that no matter what you think of me personally, you have to believe, there's no doubt, that I am passionate. And I stand up, and I think I also apologize if I'm wrong, or I will apologize if I'm wrong. That being said, Heather did let me know that my daughter was wrong, and at the Green Spot we can apply for a facade grant, which we may or may not do in the future. But anyway, let me go here. When I sat through one of those meetings a few weeks ago and heard all the discussion about the extra $1 million that it was going to cost to build the hockey rink community area, I was incredulous. I was flabbergasted, dumbfounded, not even sure what I was thinking. I had concerns when it was only going to cost $1,400,000 with the city chipping in $600,000 out of the parks budget and a group of parents raising the rest. I kept wondering, if the city had that kind of money, why wasn't our city looking better, much better? Let me emphasize 100% that I'm not against any hockey rink or pavilion or anything else. My grandson, who is just a little over, well, he's going on 5, he's in hockey and he loves it. His outfit, his uniform with all the safety features cost $450. And to play in a league in North Dakota with all the insurances and stuff was $500. So I've asked, who is going to pay for the kids who can't afford it? Is that absolutely in the budget that those children, everyone can play hockey? I have heard that Gunnison rents out their pavilion, and I think their ice hockey rink. Maybe I've heard they rent it a couple times this summer at the tune of $75 a rental. You know, and I'm not putting that in concrete that that's exact, so correct me if I'm wrong. So let's exaggerate a little bit and pretend Alamosa would rent our proposed facility out for 4 days a week for 10 weeks during the summer. Let's say the rent is $75, and that comes to $3,000. My figures may be out of line, and that's okay. Give me some accurate estimates on what this facility might cost the taxpayer, how much income is projected from that rental, realistically from rentals. Who's lined up and signed up to rent that facility? And $1 million extra, that's a lot of money. And what I heard in the meeting, and I guess it's Amanda who's the budget person. What I heard that was kind of scary to me was, Amanda, see if you can make those figures work. I don't operate that way. Anyway, how can we keep building buildings and yet not have the staff and manpower and money to maintain them, and even maintain what we already have? One of the meetings I attended this spring regarding the comprehensive plan, it was stated that some of the funds that would be asked for would need to be used to update the recreation center. My question is, if we have $600,000 floating around someplace, why isn't the recreation center already updated? And what does it mean by needing updating? What is in need of repairs now? And are we robbing Peter to pay Paul to get these projects done? The statements about updating remind me of jail repairs that now will be funded with the penny sales tax increase. For years and years and years, no one did any updating at the jail. And now we are faced with emergency conditions, and the improvements are only a Band-Aid until we will be forced to build a new jail. How long before that's a tax burden? Let's go another direction. I'm trying to get through everything here, guys. I want to thank Jan and Christina for taking time to go on a mini tour around City Hall and a couple areas downtown. And Liz was going to go but got delayed on some plane on her vacation and stuff. But in my humble opinion, there is no pride in Alamosa right now. And if you go on a tour with me, you'll see that. I don't believe we have the staff we need to get that pride back right now, or something's wrong. I would be curious to know how much landscaping budgets were 20 years ago and what they are today. You all know I was fired or given the option of quitting many years ago. I'm pretty much over that until I look at what we have in Alamosa right now. And then I get kind of angry. When I look at the condition of the area by the bowling alley that hasn't been planted for 2 years, I look at the Monterey Cafe where the highway splits and there's nothing there, and it was bulldozed last year, and even plants were sprayed with Roundup. I'm talking shrubs and perennials, the toughest I know of. And I know a little bit about flowers. I'm not perfect, but they're gone. I look at the Murphy lift station. I look at the Alamosa lift station. I look at the parking lot at catty corner from the visitor center. How many people go by that area every day? And I was a little gutsy and let my club members with Operation Pride plant a few leftover flowers. And the area by Terry's Liquor and the area in front of our train pavilion, what did that train pavilion cost us? $450,000? I humbly ask you all to walk that area and take a look. I'm embarrassed, I'm depressed, and I wonder where the accountability is. I'm not looking for work. I want my town to look better. I want visitors to stop here and say what a beautiful little town this is. I want the city of Alamosa, and I've asked for this before, I want you to hire someone who knows what they're doing, that they know what an annual is and a perennial is, and they know what to do with a dead branch on a shrub, and they know what to do with a elm seedling that's growing in the middle of that shrub. I want someone who walks these areas and knows when sprinklers are broken, knows when the shrubs are dying, and knows how to fix them. It's a real easy thing. All they have to do is have a little bit of pride, initiative, but we have to let them do that. My Operation Pride Club. Blue Peaks called me, I don't know, 6-8 weeks ago, and some of their clients wanted to be out in the public eye. I really don't have time to do it, but I've made time. The clients kind of slow me down a little bit from my day-to-day hurry. But you know, when we're sweeping, and we have a lot of pride. We're pretty proud of what we're doing, very proud. But I have to wonder, how did it get this way? And is it my job? Could I be doing other things with my friends? I think I could. This filth has been building for years. It didn't build last week or since May or anything. You know, walk by the little Veterans Park and look at the trash container. Christina took pictures. How many visitors walk by that trash container every day? And that's what they see about Alamosa. And then go look at the one at the Bistro restaurant, because that's one I took a chance and cleaned it and painted it, and it looks nice. Look at the trash container by WSB. The door is broken off, and it's been that way for I don't know how long, but it's facing public, and it looks like crap. I respectfully ask you to walk through Cole Park. I hadn't been to Cole Park in I don't know how long, maybe to the playgrounds, but I was at the Richmond Brother concert on Sunday. I don't know what's going on with your grass, but it's worse than I've ever seen it. Something's going on. Sprinklers, maintenance, I don't know. Is it the ultimate plan to let all the grass die and put rock down there? I don't know, but I think the public deserves to know. I don't know what it is. I understand that the city is working on a new plan, which Heather, I think, will be talking about tonight. My question is, how many new plans do you need to implement? Coming up with a new plan because you can't maintain the old plan is not a very good excuse for a new plan. How many years does it take to do a new plan? The Monterey Cafe area has been barren for 2 years. Plants were actually sprayed with Roundup. How much has the city already lost because of negligence? My very conservative estimate would be $25,000. I want to know where the accountability is on that. The new plan may be for every flower bed in Alamosa to be the same. Wow. Who gets to make these decisions for our entire town? Where is the input? I have volunteered to just sit in on these meetings only to find out everyone has been too busy to have any meeting this summer, and our town continues to be an embarrassment. When I get a chance to travel, if only to Creed for their rock show, I love the color, the diversity of the flower pots, the benches, the different flags and banners. I see pride and joy and laughter and more pride. Why do they have pride and color and we don't? Or maybe I'm not seeing it. Maybe part of the new plan is for allowing clover to overtake all of your lawns. I've always been taught that clover is a weed, and it only attacks a lawn when your lawn is poorly maintained. Maybe it's intentional. I surveyed people today, and 90% thought clover was a weed. That's a lie. But it kind of goes to beg when we use percentages from the number of people attending your comp plans, and I've attended 3 sessions. When you say 85 or 89% of people in Alamosa want this or want that, 89% of 52 people is not Alamosa. And I don't know the answer to that. I wish more people from all walks of life got involved and came to those meetings. But I can just as easily tell you I surveyed people today and 90%. It was actually like surveyed 3 and 60%. Anyway, the South Side. There's 9 businesses in about a 2-block area. I've been planting flowers for I don't know how many years in recycled trash containers. I think it's time, if we have this, and I don't know how your parks budget works, with your recreation budget works. It's too complicated for me. But if we have a lot of money, it's time that the South Side businesses get the respect that we deserve, and we get some regular planters. Somehow we get banners. We want the same sweeper schedule as is in downtown Alamosa. It would be great if our corners could be painted within a week of downtown. If I knew when the street sweeper was coming, I would personally walk to every business and say, hey, you sweep your area out and I sweep my area out. We'd preferably like the old street sweeper because it picks up a way lot more dirt. We'd like our ADA parking spots to be painted. We would like to be considered in any signage and wayfinding things that are being planned, because after all, in our area, we have a grocery store, a laundromat, a gas station, and 2 antique stores where people could shop. We have a pretty vibrant little business area, and we should be treated the same as downtown. I remember a few years ago, this is South State Avenue, going to our brand new airport with a brand new airlines flying in. When Mr. Simmons frantically went up and down the road by the airport asking people to get their cars off the grass. The cars had parked under the trees watching the airport fly in when they did all the old planes and stuff. I thought it was pretty ridiculous. At the time, there were nice trees and lots of grass along that stretch. The feeling was that this was the entrance into Alamosa from the airport and should be nice and green. Since that time, a line was cut or broken, I'm not sure what. Trees have died, the grass has died, we've got weeds and dirt. So we have a new airport, we have a new plane, and it just doesn't look very nice. And we either need to hop on that and get it going, or we need to tell the people why. That's about it. I'm going to leave off one last part. I ended a couple weeks ago. I was harsh. I was strong. I feel just as strongly about it that City Council needs to change their policy for whatever reason, other than when we have children in our town that are sick. We should be able to have a day named in their honor. Jaden just recently made a Make-A-Wish trip to Scotland. Now, you don't get a Make-A-Wish trip. You just don't get those very easily. Half of his trip was good, and half of his trip he had to be sedated most of the time because it was too much for him. Today he's on his way to Denver to Children's Hospital because they think something else is going on with his bones. It saddens me and will always sadden me that July 9th, other than me being a witch and queen for the day in my own mind, could name a day for a young man who is so ill. And if it ever came to the time when Peyton Sanchez needs a day, I'll do the same damn thing. Thank you. I'd gladly take anyone on a tour. You don't have to ask me any questions. I don't want any justification. I don't want anything except answers on some of what's going on in downtown and how we can make Alamosa more beautiful for tourists and people that ride the train to stop downtown. I don't care if they come to the Green Spot. But I do want them to stay in restaurants. I want them to stay in motels. I want them, if they find me, they'll come back, and they'll come back again and again and again. But we have to make them stop. And right now, take a drive, take a slow drive, or take a walk, and walk and see what I'm talking about. Thank you. Do you want a picture?
Thank you, Ruthie. And thank you, Ruthie. And we've got another presentation from an outside agency. We've got electrical contractors here. Would you please approach the podium?
Mayor, if I may. Can we discuss at all any of the concerns that Ms. Brown just brought up?
I think we should probably move on with our electrical contractors, and if staff wishes to make any comments, they can. But I've got a presentation from the electrical contractors. That's fine. We can do it under council comment. Sir, identify yourself and your address if you so wish, sir.
All right, most of you know me. I'm Mark Ensley with Valley Electric. I'm here with my brother Lynn that has Quality Electric. And we just want to bring something to your attention and that we've been seeing for quite some time. The big thing is the handymen that are doing things that they're not licensed to do without permitting and doing things illegally and wrong. That's really dangerous. It really hits me in the heart because Angelo Duarte was one of those kids that we used to travel around the country with wrestling, and I think Angelo would still be alive today had there been a little more training going on. I think he was had got his life back in a good spot. He was starting back on the right road and just made some mistakes that ultimately cost him his life. Some of the things that we're finding out in the community that are being done are not just wrong, they're absolutely wrong. Wrong size wire, wrong type of connection, wrong type of wire being aluminum where it should be copper. And these are things that we just want you to be aware of. We've talked to the people on your staff. They've been very helpful, and we appreciate their helpful comments and concerns. We were going to come last week, and they actually decided to put us on the agenda. But we've got some things in the box that I'll have Lynn bring around to show you, and these are things that have been, we've taken out. It really puts us in a bad position because we have to break the bad news to people who think that they're paying someone who is legitimate, and they found out they are not. And then we look bad when we come in and say, we go by the National Electric Code. This is the minimum, not the requested. This is the minimum, and they're not even doing that. These are boxes that have been altered, screws that have been altered, wrong size wire, wrong type of wire. The type of wire that are on these outlets is what they call zip cord, and it melts. And the insulation literally melts off like butter. If it gets too much amperage in, it becomes a heating element, and it's very, very dangerous. And we just want to bring that to your attention. When we see people, we let them know that they're doing something wrong and illegal. A lot of them don't have insurances, and that's a big issue that they're going to have to find out the hard way when they hire someone to do something at their house and their contractor is not licensed to have liability insurance. All that liability falls on that homeowner. And if someone happens to die, they can sue them to the limit of their insurance, and then it becomes a civil suit to go after them personally so they can lose everything they have. So we don't know what the answer is. We would like to see larger penalties and larger penalties enforced. For me to keep my license, I spend on average of $1,000 to $1,500 a year just for licensing. And it's wrong that we have handymen that have absolutely no licensing, no insurance, no license from the city, license from the county, and they're performing jobs that require licensing and permits. The amount of revenue you're losing out on permits is another big issue. So again, we don't have the answers, but we want to bring that to your attention, and hopefully you guys can come up with a policy of some sort or a system that really helps everybody that's being a positive citizen and doing everything correctly. And those are things that we pride our businesses on a daily basis. So we'd be glad to answer any questions that you guys have.
And Mayor, if I could just provide a little bit more context. There's discussions that staff's been having with Mark and Lynn in regards to this, and we're going to continue to have discussions into kind of how to strengthen the city's role, maybe add some teeth and those types of things. So while we don't know exactly what those recommendations look like right now, I think Lynn and Mark wanted to make sure council's aware what's going on, kind of what the significance is, and so we are continuing those discussions. And as you can imagine from a staff perspective, you know, in regards to permitting, there's not a lot of incentive for someone to come and get a permit because there's not a lot of teeth. If someone's doing work without a permit, we do a stop work order, but then they come down and they get the permit. There's no penalties, there's nothing like that. So that contributes to this. And so we don't have a recommendation for you tonight, but I think Mark and Lynn just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of the significance and hear from them as professionals in the field and be able to ask questions.
Thank you, Heather, and I think it's important for us to realize that I think this is an issue that staff needs to look at in depth and possibly make some recommendations to council. And so we will go ahead and just wait for any recommendations that you might make as far as this issue goes. Continue collaborating with a lot of our licensed contractors and possibly come up with some ideas that the council can look at and possibly form policy around.
The other item, and I just remembered this as you were speaking, is we wanted to do it in a public forum as well in order to help educate the public in hopes, you know, if someone's watching this meeting or reads the newspaper or something like that, that it can be a little bit of a caution if they were looking at a contractor to look for certain things before they hire. And so that's the other reason we wanted to have this presentation in a public meeting as well.
Thank you, Heather. Councilor Grego.
I guess a question for Mark. What is the state inspector doing? Does he go around and?
They do. They actually have a file. They can give them a ticket. The first offense is $250, and it doubles every time after that. On the third offense, they're caught. They actually pull their license.
But is he going out there, Mark, and looking at this stuff, or is it too much? You know, is he too busy, or? How do you catch these people that are doing this?
I think they know. I mean, there are contractors that do it. If they know the inspector's going out of town, they bring all their people that are not licensed and work in that area when they know where he's going to be at. So they're overworked right now. It's something that the state also needs to look at.
Thank you.
Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much. As someone who wouldn't know what to do or not to do, I really appreciate this, but I'm wondering if there's public education campaign or links we could talk to, or even like what to look at when looking at a contractor and the steps for the city potentially putting that on the website or social media, because I feel like many of us wouldn't know. And I mean, I ask a lot of questions, but I also get treated differently, I think, than other people who ask questions sometimes because of my gender. And so I feel like giving people some knowledge on their own in order to ask the right and appropriate questions could be a good thing for the city to either help or support, or if you guys have websites that we could link people to, I would appreciate that as well.
Okay. We have a website, and I know both Lynn and I are involved enough that you can get our cell phone numbers from the websites, the offices, and most of you probably already have them. So don't be afraid to call. Like I say, it's a very open dialogue. We'll be willing to help with whatever we can and help educate people. So,
Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilor Daniel that education on this issue is very important. And another question I had for maybe you gentlemen or for staff is, what's the responsibility on the property owner that's hiring these people to do this work, knowing that they're not licensed or doing things the wrong way and stuff like that?
It's actually all the responsibility of the homeowner, but they don't care because they're looking at the bottom dollar. And they don't really know, technically, they hire someone in good faith that they think they are experts in their field when they are not. So that's a good question, but most people are ignorant of the situation. I know a lot about electricity. I don't know a lot about other things, and that's when I have to ask questions, research it, and really take that diligence on myself to find out and accept that responsibility.
So then if a property owner hires someone like this, can the city, and we find out later that, can the city hold them accountable a little bit as well for hiring someone like that?
Well, I hesitate to answer without looking into things, but I think probably a better approach is to tighten up the city's ability to make sure that proper permits are obtained. And then if proper permits are obtained, we know what's going on, and we know that the right inspections are happening. I think the problem, and maybe the Hensley brothers can correct me, but I think the problem is that people are doing stuff without getting permits at all, and the city isn't involved. We have no clue what's going on.
And I'd like to add, this ain't just an electrical thing. I've gone to bids where I've been the only licensed guy there, and these guys are masters of all trades. They can do tile, they can do floor, they can do the plumbing, they can do the electrical, and I tell the people, have them show you their license. I said, I can pull mine out right now. If they can't do that, they're not allowed to do that. And it doesn't, bottom line, some people know, some people don't. And it's a real safety issue. The last place I was in, I about stepped in a 208 box, 30 amp on a wet floor. Just so you know, this was in a marijuana grow. I was walking through in the dark because his plants had to be in the dark. And I about stepped in it hot. He had it on the floor, in the water, wet, open box. And it's only going to get worse. I mean, the stuff I'm seeing now is bad. If I'm afraid, your firemen should be afraid. I've seen them jump meters. They're ahead of the meter so it doesn't go to the public service.
Councilor Stefano.
I sympathize with you guys as a business owner. I really identify with what's going on. For me to do a paint job, I got to have workman's comp. That workman's comp is 18% of $100. You got to have it. A lot of homeowners won't ask, but a lot of them will. What the reason is why they don't ask, I have to have $1 million on my vans in case my van rolls and hits something. I have to have $1 million on that. I have $1 million general liability if my workers break something in a house. My insurance has to cover this. Okay, these guys, the fly-by-nights that we're talking about, I see one on Facebook all the time, pictures of this poor lady. This guy told her he knew drywall. There's gaps around the ceiling. He ruined her hardwood floor. And this guy is just bouncing from job to job, collecting money, and nobody's doing anything about it. I'm sure they see Facebook because this guy gets his job off of Facebook, and he's a handy little chap guy, and he knows everything about everything. but I mean, he's trashing people's houses and getting away with it. And he goes on to the next job. These people complain on Facebook. I don't know where else they could complain, but they do it on Facebook. And it shows pictures of the houses that they literally butcher this house. I mean, and I can sympathize with you guys, how you feel, because I'm in the same position, and it costs me money to get a paint job and to do it professionally. But these guys, they just go tell the homeowner a bunch of jive and convince the home. They got silver tongues, man, a lot of these guys, and they take the money and they're gone. A lot of them are gone with a down payment. It's happening all the time in Alamosa. And I don't know who's going to put a stop to it, or the permits that you know, I have to have a general contractor's license to be a painter. Yeah, so, and these guys just, you know, they just go out there and they tell the people what they want to hear, and they get the job, and before you know it, the homeowner's screwed, and they don't know where to turn, except for a small claims court or something like that. But it's really scary out there.
Well, if it's in Alamosa, send them to Harry. If it's in the county, send them to, well,
Ken Van Orden.
Ken Van Orden, but he's retiring, so I don't know who it's going to be now. I mean, those guys can do some things to these guys. At least issue them a cease and desist.
Well, we appreciate your time. We really do. Your staff has been wonderful to work with. They've been very knowledgeable and really gone out of their way to help us. So I appreciate that, and just having them listen is a nice thing also. So thank you, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call.
Thank you, gentlemen, and we appreciate you bringing these problems to light. We will now move on to business brought forward by city staff, Public Works. Consideration of the request of Kiva Apartments LLC for the waiving of the council-imposed requirement for the construction of a standard size street for ingress and egress off of future Monroe Avenue. Pat, thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you, sir. We have been approached by the owner of Kiva Apartments with a request to waive the council-imposed requirement of the construction of a standard-sized street for ingress and egress off future Monroe Avenue at the southwesterly corner of the Kiva apartment complex on West 8th Street. The requirement was made a condition of approval for the rezoning of Tract 1 of the Patterson subdivision in July of 2012. Staff and the Planning Commission had passed a unanimous recommendation of approval with one access point on West 8th Street. I can go into great detail as far as all of the documentation and the chronology of all the communications and everything that have been involved in this project since, or we can turn it over to Dr. Patterson, who can talk more specifically to the request and answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Pat. Do we have any questions of Pat?
Can you explain this, Pat?
Sure. This is a site diagram of what was agreed upon when council made their decision. If you look down at the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see the secondary drive. That is the improvement that's in question tonight. Monroe Street is not yet built, so we have an agreement for the construction of that with a letter of credit guaranteeing those revenues. Kiva Apartments is asking that requirement be waived.
Not the Monroe Street requirement, but the secondary.
The secondary drive, yeah.
Councilor Grego.
I guess there's a lot of council people here that probably weren't back in 2012, and let me shed a little history. I represent that area, and we have had nothing but nightmares out there. And in fact, Mr. Pat just went through some nightmares trying to straighten out West 8th because of stuff that hasn't been done correctly. So now we take the bull by the horns and we start doing stuff correctly, because there is going to be a lot of building going on out there, not just this gentleman's buildings. We've got 2 elementary schools out there, and a lot of stuff is going to start building out there. And at that time, the Planning Commission and the council looked at the vision for the future and implemented stuff for the future. Now for the doctor to come back and want to take something out that council saw the future, I think it's totally wrong. I think we're in the right track of keeping everything straight, keeping everything done right, so that in the future, when we're not here, and somebody else is, it's being done right. And if we start deciding to retract stuff that was done correctly back then, I think we're setting the wrong precedents, that other councils looked at and other planning commissions looked at of problems in that area. Like I say, I wish there was a way that to enforce that Monroe Street, and I've talked to our city manager, and this is something that can go on for 40 years. As long as, if we can get somebody, if we can't get the other people on, we can't build a half a street. So if we can't get the other side to come in, we might not ever see that street, But the building's going to continue going. And if we don't put an end to this, I think it's wrong. Right now we're trying to clean up that whole Washington Edition area, and we're doing it in phases, and we're trying to clean up the whole area. This is not the only area that's going to happen. There's a lot of building going on right up the street from this gentleman's place. They're already building. Somebody else is building stuff. So if we don't stick to the correctness of this, I think we'd be doing something wrong for the future. So.
Councilor Vihil.
Thank you, Mayor. Pat, just a clarifying question, just so I'm fully aware of what transpired back in the day. In 2012, the council approved that the property owner had to build that secondary drive.
That was made a condition of the approval of the project, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Of the approval of the rezoning of the track.
And do you recall what the vote was on that? Was it unanimous? Was it?
I do not remember what that was.
And to clarify, because I had a discussion with Mr. Coleman today, when we use the terminology of that it needed to be a standard street size, that was just to describe the size that access needed to be. This is not a street. It's an access point for this development. And so I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't any any confusion related to the use of that language in regards to this secondary drive request. And then obviously to make clear, as council has indicated, that what's before you tonight does not impact Monroe Street in the requirement that the funds that have been set aside for once the triggers occur to have that be built. This is entirely focused on just the secondary drive.
And if I may, to kind of go off of what Mr. Grego said with the future and doing things the right way, and I talked to the city manager as well, just to get some more knowledge on this issue. For the future, we need to iron some things out, and saying half of a street and those types of conditions, I think we need to really look at and change for the future. Because I don't know if a half a street was the right thing for that council at that time to say or to propose. Thank you.
Councilor Daniel.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I'm confused, so I apologize for that. Is this actually in a parking lot, or is it outside of a parking lot to connect to a parking lot? I'm missing something.
It will connect the south end of the parking lot to Monroe Avenue when Monroe Avenue is built.
Okay, so there actually won't be any parking, it's just a throughway?
It's just an access, yes.
Okay. Okay, and then what I read in this, that staff, which I'm thinking is you, Pat, and others, is not convinced of the need for the secondary access point. What are the pros and cons of this going forward from staff perspective?
From our perspective, what the Planning Commission and former Public Works Director Conklin recommended approval, a unanimous approval based on the project without that access point. Council made it a condition of approval when it came to the council. That was not the recommendation of the Planning Commission. Kiva Apartments is claiming that it has the potential to degrade the security of the complex, to create traffic issues because people will be driving. They'll be getting through traffic coming through there. Benefits. potentially you have a secondary point of ingress or egress if we're ever doing street work on West 8th or on Monroe. There certainly are benefits, so.
If I may, Mayor, to address Mr. Daniels also, one of the biggest concerns back then also was you have all these people going into West 8th Street. At that time, there was just 2 units. Now there's 4. And I don't know how many people to each unit. I don't know how many apartments they have.
I can't remember off the top of my
So
head.
you add 4, now you got 4 units piling into West 8th Street, coming out of this one little access, And that was one of their biggest concerns. So if you have another access, you kind of divide that out, and you access into Monroe one of these days when it is built. So you have a good flow both ways, You don't got everything just flowing out one way and that's it, So that was one of the biggest concerns. And I've had an opportunity to visit with people out there, and they still, some of them were going to come tonight, and I said, I hope council doesn't change what was passed back then in Planning Commission, unanimously passed back then, and we'll see what happens. So.
Councilor Stefano.
I'm a little vague on, you stated that there's traffic going to be in and out. These are apartments. Why would there be traffic in and out? I can see the tenants pulling into their space, but we're talking about cars going in and out all the time?
That's a claim
there?
being made by the developer, by the property owner. It's not a staff concern. They're claiming that they have an increased chance of through traffic, people driving through the parking lot like a street.
And it is council prerogative if you want to ask any of these questions of Dr. Patterson. That's your prerogative because he is here, so.
Thank you.
I was here during a lot of those discussions, and basically, if I remember correctly, council wanted an ingress and egress between the 2 apartment complexes at that point in time, which never happened. It never happened, and so the reason council was adamant about ingress and egress onto Monroe was because of the impact it was having on 8th Street. A lot of those residents on 8th Street were very, very concerned about the number of vehicles that were ingressing and egressing on 8th Street. Now, if you didn't have this ingress and egress on Monroe, that would double or maybe quadruple the capacity of that ingress, egress on 8th Street. And that was the reason that council decided to make that part or a condition of any type of building permit in the future. If I remember, Charlie, that was one of the reasons. But what happened was they pushed everything north. The second complex was pushed north, and that eliminated the ingress egress between the 2 complexes, and so they moved everything south so that would occur. Not only will it alleviate a lot of the traffic on 8th Street, but it would also alleviate a lot of the traffic in the future that needs to go down to 10th Street. Because as Charlie said, that entire area is being developed. And to block that off and to say we are not going to have ingress and egress on that street or towards Monroe, I think we're doing a disservice to the people that are actually renting those complexes and to the people that are going to develop and use that street on 8th. Because 8th is a very well-traveled street, especially now with all the new schools. And so we need to make sure that safety is a primary concern. And I think that's the reason that council wanted this ingress and egress on the south side.
And
just to clarify, this is a request of the property owner. This isn't a recommendation from staff.
the other point of clarification, and I don't want to get lost in the weeds of the details here, because I think your point is more of why council wanted the ingress and egress, and that was the major point of your statement. the plans that were submitted at the time and the minutes that we have from that meeting do not mention the ingress and egress in between the buildings. So that's not necessarily germane to what you guys are thinking about tonight, but I just want to make sure everybody understands that there hasn't been any swapping of plans or any changing of the location and that kind of stuff.
Well, let me clarify something. There were two of us, and I think that included Charlie. That was Councilor Tuggle, myself, and I think even Charlie were adamant about ingress and egress onto Monroe. The only thing that held everything back was the fact that we didn't have clear title to the entire Monroe Street at that point in time. That's what complicated things when Costin was here. And so that in itself kind of moved council for an ingress egress on the south side. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Oh, okay, and again, I wasn't discounting anything related to that, because there was definite discussion of needing the ingress, and that's why the council motion and vote includes having that secondary drive. I just wanted to make sure we're clear that location of it hasn't changed. That's all I was clarifying.
Thank you. Any questions or comments of Pat? Councilor Vihil.
Thank you, Mayor. Was the property owner okay with the decision back in 2012?
He accepted the decision. I don't know if he was okay with it. It was made a condition of approval. He built the apartments knowing that was a condition of approval. So I guess in that matter of speaking, he did accept it, yes.
I guess I had a question for our legal people. Do we need some kind of a motion to leave it the way it is? Or it's just a direction, or what direction do we take?
So Counselor, before we head down that direction, if I could just, this is a little different in how to handle. So, he did speak during the 3 minutes because it's not a public hearing, but it is council prerogative if you want to allow him any time to share anything or not. It's up to you. But then I'll let Eric now answer the question in regards to if something is needed to answer that question.
And Ms. City Manager, I don't think this is a hearing. They're asking to change something that other councils did and other planning commissions did in 2012. And all I'm asking our legal is, do we need a motion to just say, hey, leave it the way it is? Or what's the process?
You do need a motion to deal with the request. So the motion would be either to grant the request or to deny the request. Either one of those motions would be fine.
I will go ahead and make the motion that we deny the request and leave it the way it is, the way it was set up by the Planning Commission and Council in 2012.
And Councilor Griego, you've said that a couple of times, but just to be clear, the Planning Commission did not recommend that egress.
Okay.
It was council that recommended. Or
Then I'll amend my motion that we deny the request then.
Councilor Hensley.
I guess, and I don't know because wasn't there for the first one, and since the owner's here, I guess I'd like to hear a little bit about why this has become an issue, if that's okay. Just a little bit more in the sense of, just so I have a better picture of everything, that obviously it was okay before, but now obviously it's become a concern or it's something he'd like to change, and maybe just hear a little bit more on that perspective, if that was okay just to hear.
I second the motion.
I've got a motion and a second to deny the request. Is there any further discussion before I allow? Can I allow him to speak? All right. Before I allow him to speak.
Yes, sir. I have discussion or a comment. Before we make a decision, I think we should allow this gentleman to say what he has to say a little bit.
Fine. Sir, would you approach the podium and Mr. Patterson?
Yes.
I'll allow you 3 minutes, sir.
Okay. Well, I hope you all had a chance to read the letter from the design firm, because
My goal is not to cheapen anything or make anything unsafe at all. It's actually to make things safe and keep them safe. In fact, I'm responsible for Monroe Street now. I've taken a financial responsibility. The money's already set aside in escrow for part of that as well as for the whole secondary drive. But I had this design firm look at this, and if you read some of this stuff, even from Alamosa City Ordinance, zoning chapter code of ordinances of Alamosa, the number of service drives shall be limited to the minimum that will allow property to accommodate the traffic to be anticipated. And they've got projects with many more apartments than this on a street like this, and this with one driveway. And that's kind of the standard in Alamosa. If I thought that this would improve flow, I would keep it. It's not a money issue. But I really believe what we've experienced so far is people driving from 10th Street, cutting across a field through that road. Now, as that street gets developed and we've developed a secondary drive, I'm afraid of that still happening. And what I want is more or less a limited access, safe community. It's got security cameras, it's got good lights, so that we don't just have people wandering. Very well landscaped and high end. So they analyzed this in this letter, the street, the distance from the corner from Monroe, the traffic flow, and they recommended one street. The money's set aside, and that's fine. If I thought it would actually help the residents, I would do that, but I'm afraid it would actually cause people to speed through the parking lot from the south end to the north end, and if we have the design changes that they recommended with changing the traffic flow to the east end so that there's a circular drive there, turnaround drive on the south end, then we'll have good traffic flow, good visibility on on 8th Street, and good traffic flow that would accommodate a size of apartment, according to them, several times larger than this. So I am trying to be a very good neighbor in that area. Monroe Street's going to be my responsibility, and like I say, I want good traffic flow, but it seems to me like it won't give us what we want. But this other design up there, modifications, will allow traffic flow to continue without having through traffic and without having walk-through traffic. We want safety and security for families and women and everybody out there in their cars and all. So the idea was and is, I want the best apartment complex with the best safety and security, and I think the secondary drive, well-intentioned, doesn't accomplish that. So, I had this firm analyze it, and I hope you had a chance to read it. It more than meets all code and provides better safety, and he has the statistics in here, what happens to safety and security when you have a secondary drive. It's nationally known that it increases crime. So it's just a matter of what flows and how it will work. It's going to be, it's a beautiful project. I want it to be even more beautiful. That center gazebo area, that's going to be a park. And I don't want non-residents driving through a private complex and increasing our security concerns, basically. I'd be happy to walk you through it. I think that when you see it on the ground, it helps, but this shows it pretty well. And I can leave an access point for fire or something like that with a gate, but if it's completely open to a road that isn't built yet, but even when it's built, it's going to cause cross-through traffic and walk-through traffic, and that's what we don't want. And a nice, and look at all the other apartment complexes. They have one driveway. But again, I'm not saying it's $25,000 or whatever. That's already, the bank set that aside. I want the best that we can have, and I believe that this is it. With their design changes, it's even a little bit better than the first plan. So I implore you to read this carefully and know that I'm not thinking about turning something bad out of this. I'm looking at a very nice project with smart traffic flow and smart security. So I appreciate your time, and I know it's passionate, and and I'm neighbors with everybody in that section of town, and I believe that we're good neighbors, and we want to maintain that. They want security, I want security. That's a big issue nowadays, and we have to design our streets and parking lots for safety. So please read this. There's some good details in here. It's a 5-minute read. That's all it is.
Are we allowed to ask any questions? Or no?
I've got a question for him. Go ahead, Councilor Grego.
You've got 4 units out there now. How many people for a complex do you have out there now?
There's 16 apartments in each building. They're all identical, and there's
16, and that's 2 cars per unit? How do you figure that out?
I'm sorry?
You got 16 units, 60 apartment per unit.
And there's 4 apartments, so there's 64 apartments when it's fully developed.
64. And you allow how many vehicles per unit?
2 at maximum. We have the National Parking Code and the Alamosa Parking Code in here, and we exceed that. Yeah. Even with the changes, we lose 2 parking spaces if we make the recommended changes, but we will, let me find that page, on this bottom of the second page below this map, it'll talk about the only disadvantage of improving the circulation in the lot is the net loss of 2 parking places. This may be acceptable as parking currently provides 1.8 spaces per unit, 115 parking spaces divided by 64. Exceeding the zoning code requirements of 1.5 and the National Parking Association recommendations of 1.67. So the deal is that we have a lot of 1-bedrooms too. So each building has 11 2-bedrooms and 5 1-bedrooms, and there's a mix. We average, somewhere over 1 car per apartment, but we have a lot of 1-car apartments.
And you also kept on saying that you're responsible for Monroe.
Yeah, I assume that
you're responsible for the whole street?
Yes, I assumed that responsibility when after the last meeting where, with Mr. Wilcox, was it? Where, he agreed to pay for the Monroe Street when building was accomplished on the edge of it. When we went out to the parking lot, he said, I'm ready to sell it. And I said, well, I can roll it over into my construction costs. Let me talk to the bank. So I assumed that responsibility at that time.
For the whole street, not half a street?
Correct. I'm sorry, am I speaking out of turn here? That's my understanding.
No, well, my understanding is that you're only going to be able to have, you're only
that was the
responsible for half.
original, when it was between Wilcox owned all the surrounding property, and including on the other side of Monroe to the south. And at the time when I bought the 18 acres to the east and south of there, and on both sides of the proposed Monroe Street, that was my agreement with the city. Correct, Heather?
So you own both sides of Monroe Street now?
To the south of there, not up to the north, right behind there where there's private residences.
Okay. When is this street going to be built?
Well, I can put $25,000 more to it over here, and I'll be halfway there. I mean, we've got $50,000 on Monroe Street in escrow. I put another 25 over there. I'm going to be looking at the cost of asphalt. But I am serious when I'm saying that I'm not trying to diminish anything here. I want it to have the best access, the smartest, and the safest access. And that's why I had these people engineer it.
And that's what we're looking at too, is the safety part. And
absolutely.
And you just described that with the cars coming in there, you're over already.
No, I don't know what you mean. The traffic flow or the parking spaces or what?
Parking spaces?
No, sir. I'm under Alamosa Code, under National Code, over. I have more parking spaces than either code requires. And so far, with 2 buildings and the long lot built, we have a lot of empty spaces. We're adding all of those spaces around there. So we have more than adequate parking for 64 apartments by code, city, national, and our experience.
Okay, thank you.
To answer the technical question, any development on that property that abuts Monroe Street will trigger the construction of the street per the agreement,
But when?
when that development occurs. There's not a time frame for that. So any development that occurs
If I
will
sell
trigger that.
or develop one lot anywhere else there, then that triggers a development of the entire street.
And I thought that the thought process back then was that if you started developing any more, which these other 2 units you put on there, that would trigger it, and apparently it didn't trigger it, so.
No, that couldn't be right, because at that time, we didn't even own the Monroe Street right-of-way.
And the motion includes just half the street of Monroe Street.
Before I ask for a vote, Mr. Patterson, I've got a question for you. You said you own the property immediately west of the complexes?
No, sir, I don't, because there's some homes right there. But if you go south on Monroe Street, Kiva owns both sides. And I'm not sure on this map exactly where that point is. It may be near the south end of the second building, or it may be further north. But there's that one house I know of for sure on the corner. And I think there's, but somewhere south of that, I do.
Is your intention to build more complexes on the south side?
No.
No.
No, sir.
Thank you.
There's a retention pond right there that's like on the edge of your map. That would be the next thing that's there. We put in for both ourselves and for the drainage of 8th and Monroe.
Thank you. I've got a
And I
motion and a
donated that to the city.
Are there any further questions? If not, I've got a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Coleman.
I just have a comment, Mayor. The challenge for me in waiving anything that was done by prior council is not having all of the knowledge of what happened back then to overrule something that was already there, Dr. Patterson. And the other challenge I have is that when you waive things that was established in the past, sometimes it could be perceived as favoritism to a developer. And that's something else that I struggle with. So it's a huge challenge for me right now to waive anything that past council recommended at this time for me.
Thank you, Councilor Grego. Any further discussion? Start voting, please. We're voting to deny. Holly?
The motion carried 5-2 with Councilors Hensley and Stefano casting the no vote.
Thank you. We will now move on to consideration of 4- and 7-year proposed timeframes for the construction of First Street. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, sir. Just want to make you aware of some changes that have been made to the CIP since you saw it last, and discuss the time frame for First Street construction. We've added the LED streetlight conversions. That'll take place over the next 3 years. We have added all of the improvements at the wastewater treatment plant that are necessary that we've discussed in the past. They just hadn't been transferred on to the CIP yet. We've included the levee project as a study. We've included Main Street streetscapes as a study. We had a lot of facility improvements at the rec center lumped in with the general fund improvements, so we separated the rec center improvements out of the general fund. We have made those changes and just wanted to make you aware of them if you didn't notice them in your packet. And also, so that we can continue and finalize the CIP, just a reminder, at your work session on July 6th, we presented the proposed 2017 capital improvement plan, which included two potential timeframes for the construction of First Street. The first, a 4-year plan, included longer segments, longer construction times each year, more extensive impacts on other planned projects around the city, but it completed the project in 4 years. The second, a 7-year plan, provided for shorter segments, potentially fewer construction days each year, fewer impacts to other planned projects around the city, but it extended the project for another 3. While the benefits are many, the 7-year plan will ultimately cost more when one considers another 3 years of construction cost increases, 3 more mobilization fees, et cetera. But understanding the issues associated with each, we are seeking your input as to how you would like to proceed.
Thank you, Pat.
I've prepared.
Just 1 second. Just, Pat, did you want to explain the two
Yeah,
maps real
I've
fast?
prepared 2 maps, each showing different colored lines for the projects, the extents of the projects that will be done under each scenario. This first is a First Street priority, I'm calling it. That's doing First Street in 4 years. You can see that in 2017, we'll do a big chunk of First Street, the intersection up at Murphy and Oliver and Clark, and then down at the very bottom, Princess Anne Place. And then the yellow lines are what we would be able to do in 2018, the cyan lines 2019, and the magenta lines 2020. Then we would continue on with the CIP. The next map shows the differences. This shows what we can do over those same years if we stretch First Street out to 7. So you can see where we're doing more projects around the city, but First Street will take 3 more years. So we're seeking your input so we can finalize the CIP for ultimate approval. She can show you the first one again.
I guess I had a question while you're looking at that. On the 7-year, Pat, I know the biggest concern is First Street, you know, the problems we have in a certain area. Would those be addressed in the first part of the 7 years?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, in the 7-year plan, we're going to knock out the worst parts of the street first.
Okay. Because that was the biggest concern is, you know, and I know as you further, I think you further go down towards Cole Park, sure there's problems, but not to the extent where we have a problem right there by the college and.
Right now, I think the worst part of the street is from Murphy to probably Edgemont.
Yeah. Thank you, Pat.
Do we have any other questions of Pat?
I do.
Councilor Stefano.
Pat, if we decided to go with the 4-year plan, that's going to eliminate a lot of the projects, like in my neighborhood in Ward 4. If we went with a 7-year plan, is there a possibility that some of these streets and stuff in our ward would be taken care of?
Well, yeah, you can see the changes in the plan on these 2 maps. And then also keep in mind too, we have the $150,000 a year for maintenance. This doesn't include that. We'll still continue that maintenance program every year. These will just be major kind of heavy lifting kind of projects.
Can you switch back, Heather, to the 4-year?
Councilor Stefano.
Okay, so we don't have nothing here.
You're getting 2 though. Pat, I have a question. If we went with the 7-year, in the packet it says that the cost will increase if we go with the 7-year. Will that be a dramatic increase? Do you have any kind of estimation?
I really can't tell you. We'll have 3 more mobilization fees on First Street, which they range they average $12,000 to $15,000 a year on those projects. So we'll have those. We average about a 5% increase a year in construction materials and labor costs. So when you're looking at for every $100,000, looking at $5,000, we're looking on the 7-year projects, I think I kept them to about $350,000. So we're looking at another $15,000 a year. So over those 3 years, you could potentially be looking at 6 figures.
Okay, and then if you could answer this question again from the last time we talked about this. If we went with the 7-year plan, the first section that would be done in year 1, in 7 years, what would happen with that section? Just a redoing of the top, like the slip and slurry?
It'll be looking for a slurry by then, for a slurry seal.
Thank you.
If we initiated the 7-year plan, there's still a possibility that we're going to do some more streets in the meantime during the 7-year period?
Well, the 7-year plan does allow for more projects around town, without a doubt.
But to be clear, it's not more projects than what are showing up here. So, because these projects fit within that total amount that we think works within the 10-year financial plan. So these might change if a higher priority comes up, but that dollar amount. So I just want to make sure we're clear on that. There's more that's done in the 7-year plan, but I don't want council to think there's going to be even more that's not shown on this depiction right here.
Right. We have to keep in mind that the street projects are so closely tied to utility projects. So we need to, it's kind of a balancing act trying to make all of that work together. So they're making wholesale changes to this is difficult. But like she said, if we have other bad failures that happen between now and then, say we have a utility failure that causes a big project in a street, that may necessitate the need to prioritize that street to get it fixed after a utility repair or something like that.
Councilor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor. Pat, and just correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to understand this the best I can. Did you mention that if we spread the project out over 7 years, the potential increase in cost could be somewhere in the area of $100,000?
Potentially, yes.
Okay. So my question is, let's say we decided to go with a 4-year plan, and to satisfy the people, it looks like most of the streets on the south side would be the ones that are not really being completed. If we save that $100,000, can we go in and make sure that we do more work on the south side to compensate for that?
Well, no, I mean,
savings?
if you look, we're losing projects on the north side and the south side. It's not.
Okay, I can see that now.
It's not simply the south side, and I have X amount of dollars that can be spent on streets, and I have X amount of dollars that can be spent on utilities. So trying to balance that and schedule everything harmoniously, it's difficult. So to try to take money and apply it to somewhere else when there could potentially be utility aspects to the project is going to be difficult.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. This is not really a total question for you, Pat, but when I have been talking to people about their frustration with First Street, it has been that because it does have those really bad areas, there are areas not as bad as people were saying. My concern in not doing it in 4 years is that it belabors a project that we've been talking about for a long time. So can you give me some history on how long we've been talking about fixing First Street?
Since I've been here. I've been here 6 years. Yeah, forever. We have not only do we have issues with the surface on First Street, we've got issues with the drivability. It's rough. It's not comfortable to drive. We have pedestrian issues. We have ADA issues. And there's a lot of things that need to be addressed. And these costs that are going to First Street will include a lot of sidewalk, a lot of curb and gutter, cleaning up a lot of the drainage issues, things like that.
And it is becoming one of our other primary thoroughfares.
It is our primary east-west street, yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Grego.
I guess what I see on a 7-year plan is the fact that you're addressing the problems that you have on First Street, the major problems. You're addressing those. And you're also addressing streets throughout the whole community, just as Pat said, not only the south side, but on the north side. And you're showing more work throughout the whole community versus if you do the 4-year plan and stuff. So I favor the 7-year plan because of that, because we are addressing the problem that people are having with First Street in an area where it's really bad. And then we're addressing some of these other streets that, just like the question you asked him, Chris, how long we've been waiting to do First Street. Well, those, if we've been waiting 10 years on First Street, we probably have been waiting 50 years on these other streets, or more than 10 years, you know. So I'd rather see that we spread this money across the whole community instead of just a little stretch over the next 4 years.
Councillor Hensley.
So my question is, and I guess I can almost assume the answer, but so when this construction is happening, so whether it's 4 years or 7 years, I would assume a lot of detours and messing up of driving through this First Street?
It will be painful.
And so it could be 7 years of painfulness versus 4 years of painfulness.
Correct.
And it's going to be painful whichever.
Regardless.
Okay.
Well, I'm not sure that the pain is the same. My feeling is that if you're going to go on the 4-year plan, you're going to have to improve larger sections of First Street, longer sections of First Street, which means you're going to have that street closed for a longer period of time. I travel First Street just about every day, 2 or 3 times a day sometimes. I drive it in my Mini, which is horrible, and I drive it in my town car, which is really nice, you know. So it just depends on what holes you're willing to miss to get to where you're going. However, my personal opinion is I would rather have the 7-year plan because, number one, you're going to get more projects done throughout the city. One of the things that I visit with folks about and they visit with me about is how great the city is looking as far as streets go. And more street projects, we're doing more improvements throughout the city with our streets. I mean, we're not perfect, but we're making a lot of improvements in different areas, and I think that really shows that we are committed to improving the streets. Number two, I think there would be, on the 7-year plan, there would be less impact with east-west travel. And I totally understand that there's going to be an impact, but if you work on smaller sections, you're going to have less of an impact on a major arterial in the city. And I want to tell you, today, when they were doing the electrical work over on First Street, I was not a happy camper because I had to wait. Well, can you just imagine having that street closed? I'm sure you're going to get some phone calls, and I will too. The other thing about the 7-year plan that I see is that we also have the option of moving it up if we see that it's going well. That's an option as well. We can save money there as well. So I'm in favor of the 7-year plan. And so, Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I know that I disagree with the mayor. So do we have I don't think it's a vote, but do we talk about the consensus that we have or not have?
No, I think if you could make a motion to direct staff for the final preparation of the CIP, which you will approve as part of the budget process, but we need to kind of put those bolts and nuts together. If you could just make a motion indicating either 4-year or 7-year, whichever one gets the majority vote is what we would move forward with.
Okay. So with that, Mayor, I would make a motion that we move forward with the 4-year plan. That would be my motion.
I second.
I've got a motion and a second on the 4-year plan. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to just add my 2 cents to this issue. I think we all agree, and Pat just said that this is the primary east-west route in town. And I would also say it's probably the second busiest street in town behind the highway. It serves the college, it serves the hospital, and it's also right there next to the middle school. And I'm glad to see that we're going to be getting work done on Victoria as well. However, myself being a counselor at large, on the 7-year plan, we can get more projects done and serve the greater community, which I think is important too. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Vigil. Councilor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor. I too just would like to make a comment. I'm struggling with this big time because I believe in being effective and efficient and speedy and doing things quick and moving forward. I believe in that, and I believe First Street is a major thoroughfare for a lot of people in our community, and I think it's very important with the university and the hospital being there as well. But where I'm struggling is that there are other areas like Councilman Griego mentioned that has been not addressed for several years, and going with the 7-year plan would allow those people in the community to see some progress. And sometimes when they see a little bit of progress, that just gives them a little bit of hope that their community is being paid attention to. And that's why I'm struggling with going with the shorter time period right now. So my vote will reflect the way I'm feeling, but it's for the greater good of the entire community.
Thank you, Councilor Coleman. Councilor Hensley.
So I think also I'm as torn, and I agree. I wish we could take care of both. I think one of my concerns is in the 7-year, it's going to be, First Street's going to be a mess regardless. And I think getting that done in the 4 years, if we can, is going to be so much better than the 7, because it is going to be a huge disaster in that area. Even like the mayor said, where he was really upset with the electrical for one day. Well, there's going to be a big difference then with 4 years versus 7 years of being upset. So but it's a tough decision.
Councilor Stefano.
I kind of agree with Councilor Griego. The 7-year plan, to me, sounds more feasible because it doesn't have to be all done at once. We can do the major parts around the hospital, the college, and I feel the 7-year plan will give our constituents in the South Side some hope that maybe finally we're getting something done in our neighborhood. And they approach me every day. One guy, Naranjo, every day he walks a dog and he targets me, man, right away. Mike, what about this? What about this? What about this? I'm only one guy, I tell him. But I think either way, the impact is going to be great, whether it's 4 years, 7 years. I remember when we built the one-way, it killed almost a lot of businesses on that road because it was so long in construction. And I understand the priority of First Street, but I think it could be done in sections on the 7-year period and save a lot of headaches somewhere else.
Councilor Vigil.
Thank you, Mayor. Just in response to Mr. Stefano's comments, I think it's important for us. I know that 4 of us up here are ward representatives, but I also think that we need to take the whole of the city more important, and saying it's all the south side and the south, yeah, we understand that, and I think that our vote will reflect that later. But if we keep on talking north side and south side and this side and that side, that just causes divisions, and it's what the city needs.
Councilor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. So I understand everything that everyone is speaking in, so I do appreciate, Councilor Vigil, what you just said about the division. I'm thinking about, from my perspective, and why I made the motion I made, is because I think 4 years doing this quicker with the primary thoroughfare does serve the whole city. So that is my belief. It's not because of that. And I get every day people asking me about First Street. So I understand, Councilor Stefano, your concern. And I understand the mayor's concern about being impatient after one day. I don't want to have to drive down First Street every day for 7, well, it will be in the summer. I get that. It's not going to be terrible, Pat. I'm not saying your team's bad, but 7 years is a really long time to be waiting for a street to get done when we can see construction every year and wonder why it's not finished. So I think either way, we're going to get flack. And either way, people are going to be unhappy. And so part of our job is deciding what the best overall decision is. And obviously, we're divided on that. But I do think First Street serves the entire city, regardless of what area it's in.
Thank you. I've got a Councilor Stefano? No, you're done?
I just want to reiterate, I understand, Councilor Daniels, about the 4 years that you don't want to deal with First Street. But in the long run, I don't think they're going to do all of Fourth Street in one bang like you think. I think it's going to be process. And what if something happens? Water lines get tore up, electrical lines get tore up. So now you're going to prolong the project another 3 months till they fix that. So anything can happen. Absolutely. But I'm agreeing with you that it is an arterial that's very important. I agree with that. But I also think that it's going to be done in increments. I don't think it's going to be done right away. The whole First Street is going to be the roundabout. It's going to be perfect. It's not. It's not. Either way you look at it, we're going to have to deal with a lot of pain. But I'm just looking at other projects. State Street, for instance, it's an arterial to the airport. Many of our people are going to travel State Street to get to the airport. What are they going to see on State Street too? So that's another concern. But it's not about the south side, north side, west side. It's not about that. It's about trying to make a balance throughout the whole city and touch bases on the whole city. Do this here, do a little bit here, a little bit here. Keep the constituents alive and hopeful.
Thank you, Council. I think we've kind of discussed this one to the point where we probably need to take this to a vote. And so I've got a motion and a second specific to the 4-year plan. All those in favor of the 4-year plan, vote yes. Holly?
The motion failed with a vote of 5 noes and 2 yeses.
I'll go ahead, Mayor, I'll go ahead and make the motion. We approve the 7-year plan.
I've got a motion and a second to approve the 7-year plan. Is there any discussion? Start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried 5 to 2.
Thank you, Council. We will now move on. Thank you, Council, for that heated and wonderful debate. We'll now move on to City Clerk Municipal Court. We have a resolution number 10-2016, a resolution approving an amended schedule of municipal court costs and fees.
That's me.
Holly?
The municipal court costs and fees were last updated by Resolution Number 3, 2011. Over time, it is necessary to compare court costs and fees to other municipalities and be sure we are capturing all costs and fees. After reviewing our current court costs and fees, we fall in line with most municipalities and are correctly assessing the right amount. However, with the passage of Ordinance Number 13, which implemented a surcharge for the operational expense of the police department, and new laws that were recently passed, it is necessary that we update the municipal court costs and fees to reflect these changes. So this resolution is proposing a surcharge for the operational expense of the police department in the amount of $25 to be assessed on all traffic and criminal violations in the city of Alamosa and municipal court convictions, with the exception of parking tickets and dog violations. It is in addition to any current fines and costs imposed on the defendant who pleads guilty, no contest, or who enters a plea agreement, or who after trial is found guilty of a violation of the Code of Ordinances of Alamosa, Colorado. The resolution also includes the additional fee of $65 for the sealing of records, which is the charge associated with the passage of Senate Bill 16-116, which creates an alternative simplified process for the sealing of criminal justice records other than convictions, and applies anytime a person in interest is acquitted, the person in interest completes a diversion agreement, or the person in interest completes a deferred judgment and sentence.
Thank you, Holly. Council, do we have any questions or comments on resolution number 10, 2016? Councilor Grego?
how did we come up with the $25 amount instead of?
So
Why did we
that-
pick 25? You know,
Tell him.
you could have easily raised it to $5, $10. Why $25?
I believe when we had the discussions, we were looking at what other municipalities were charging. Some were lower, some were higher, and so that's the amount we were looking at.
How low were some of them?
Maybe 10.
$10, so we decided to go the $25 one?
Right. And I
Or-
think we went a lot more on base of, Monte Vista has the same surcharge implemented, and theirs is at 25.
So just because somebody else is doing it at 25, we chose to go 25?
Well, I think when we discussed this in the work session almost a year ago with City Council, part of it was we can't really charge a fee that's fully going to compensate the city
Sure.
for the costs that go into it.
And I understand the cost. I just, you know, just the amount, I guess, you know.
So the balance, what the judge has to balance is he needs to make sure it's something that can still be paid.
Sure.
And that it doesn't get too high. But then we're also looking at trying to cover costs and those types of things. And so given that other municipalities, when you look at all of the fees that they're charging, that this was in line with that, but clearly isn't going to cover the cost. I mean, you could do 10.
And that's one of the reasons I'm looking at it at why 25, because the ability to pay for some people, that extra $25, you know, I could see if it's better to get something and not get nothing, you know, a $10 one and gradually increase it maybe through, because like you say, it's not going to cover it.
So that's clearly council's
Sure.
prerogative for you guys to discuss. Staff made
Sure.
their recommendation.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Hensley.
I think you.
I'm sorry, Councillor Hensley, you have the floor.
Well, I guess, I think when we discussed this in one of our retreats or something, we'd come up with the 25. So I'm supportive of the 25. And I'm going to be honest, so maybe that'll help deter some of the people doing some of the crimes, since it is a punish, you know, in the sense they've put themselves in that situation. So I'm supportive of the 25.
Councillor Daniel.
Thank you, Mayor. I do believe that $25 is a reasonable fee for the traffic and criminal violations for the city. Can you tell me, Holly, remind me what the other fees are that people pay when they come to court?
Yeah, so if they're found guilty, no contest, or they plead guilty, they already pay court costs of $50 and then $20 to the victim assistance. And then, of course, the fine is up to the judge.
Okay, so they're already paying 70, and this would be an additional 25?
Right.
Because of the other processes that go into getting someone into court, so police time and other things like that?
Right.
Thank you.
And that's what, you know, when we were meeting with the judge and he's trying to evaluate, you can just increase your existing already cost of your court cost, or do you do it as a police surcharge, those types of things. It's that total amount that he was trying to make sure he stayed below a certain amount.
So the average cost is $70 on what we're trying to charge, 25?
The court costs are $50 and then victim assistance is $20. And those are mandatory for anybody who pleads guilty, no contest, or is found guilty.
Because this is only going to be charged on traffic, right?
On traffic and criminal violations.
Oh. Oh.
Councillor Vihil.
Thank you, Mayor. If there's no further discussion, I move that we approve resolution number 10-2016, a resolution approving an amended schedule of municipal court costs and fees.
I second.
I've got a motion and a second to approve resolution number 10-2016. Is there any further discussion? Start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried 6-1 with Councilor Griego casting the no vote.
Thank you. We'll move on to resolution number 12, 2016, a resolution approving an amended schedule of presumptive fines for violation of the Code of Ordinances of Alamosa, Colorado. Polly?
Okay. So this one, the purpose of a fine is to serve as a deterrent to discourage a particular action. A fine is very different than the assessment of court costs. If penalty amounts are not at a sufficient level to cause a person to contemplate a change in behavior, that penalty loses its effectiveness. After reviewing and comparing the fines to other jurisdictions, the amount we are assessing to each are at an effective level. However, some violations that were assessed a fine are better addressed as a summons into court. So the changes on this are just those violations that PD has already been issuing as summons, and so now it's just going to be reflected on our schedule of fines. So rather than showing a fine, it's going to show a summons.
Councilor Vihil.
Thank you, Mayor. If there's no further discussion, I move that we approve resolution number 12-2016, a resolution approving an amended schedule of presumptive fines for violation of the Code of Ordinances of Alamosa, Colorado.
I second.
I've got a motion and a second on Resolution 12, 2016. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Stefano? Oh. Start voting, please. I'm missing one. Holly?
The motion carried 6-1 with Councilor Griego casting the no vote.
We'll move on to award of contract for community service or useful public service and day reporting services to Rocky Mountain Offender Management Systems.
Me again. The City of Alamosa Municipal Court currently has limited sentencing options available to the judge. It is desired to have more sentencing options and alternatives available to the judge other than just assessing fines and costs or giving jail time. Community service or useful public service and day reporting services are alternative options available to courts. The municipal court has previously utilized Intervention Incorporated for UPS. However, they unexpectedly closed and that option was lost, so we haven't been able to give anybody community service. Day reporting services will be an alternative to jail time and in turn will help to reduce costs associated with jail fees and also reduce recidivism. Staff issued a request for proposal and received response from one organization, which is Rocky Mountain Offender Management Systems, and they meet all the desired requests of the city.
Thank you, Holly. Councilor Stefano?
I move that we award the contract for community service or useful public service.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second for the award of the contract for community service or useful public service and day reporting services to Rocky Mountain Offender Management Systems. Is there any further discussion?
I just have a comment, Mayor.
Councilor Coleman? Yes.
I just believe by passing this ordinance, what it does is it gives our judge options when it comes to sentencing people, and I think the judge needs that type of control, especially in this climate, so that he could make sure that we find ways to deter incidents from reoccurring.
Thank you, Councilor Coleman. Councilor Griego?
Yeah, I agree with Councilor Coleman. It also gives the opportunity to people that don't have the money to pay the fines and don't want to levy the jail cost to us to at least go work for senior citizens or somebody, that needs it. So I think it is a good deal.
Councilor Daniel?
Thank you, Mayor. This type of service is fantastic for our city and gives our judge a lot of options. What I would just ask is, and I didn't see it in the contract, is when do we review with them how effective we think they're being?
I think we have it scheduled for a yearly review in the contract.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. We'll now move on to City Manager Legal, Neighborhood Planning Concepts. Heather?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a little bit of a different presentation, but I think with the amount of discussions that have been going on publicly and at different meetings, it might be helpful to try to connect some of the dots and help provide some information. And so, when people talk about downtown, how big should the downtown be, those types of things, they're using language that's very broad. Downtown can mean different things to different people. Ironically, I was in the employee break room, and downtown was shaded almost entirely, not only the Central Business District, but all the way up to TSJC campus, extended south, extended north, and so that's how they decided to shade downtown. And so the use of the word downtown can mean different things to different people, and you know, it can mean the center of town, and how big that is how big it means for different people. In regards to planning purposes and zoning and land use designation, the terms that are used are very specific for some reasons that I want to review. The key to it is usually the zoning is tied to the land use, the zoning that also can require different types of codes, different types of requirements. So if you imagine yourself at different parts in the city, how a residential low-density area feels compared to what setbacks have to be, how big they can be on the lot size, those types of things compared to a higher density residentially zoned area. You can look at different types of commercial areas. The downtown central business district, which, so I'm not even going to use the word downtown, the central business district has very technical things that come with that have significance to the city. And some of those are, it doesn't require parking. If you build in the central business district, you do not have to meet any parking requirements. That means if we want that area to be successful, it usually would fall upon the city to provide public parking then. So there's a cost by the city saying, okay, you don't need to have the parking, we're going to provide it. So how big should that size be needs to be related to how much parking the city wants to allow. The other item is when you look at setback requirements. Most of the areas that are developed in the central business district are right up to the sidewalk. Some of them may have a joint wall, or there's very little space between the walls. You also have an alleyway and other things that are used in that area, and it's a grid. So it's not something that we call the downtown when we're looking at it from a planning technical perspective. It's the central business district, and it's because there's very technical items that are associated with that. The other thing that goes into planning, and a lot of times people will consider these items fluff, there's people who study it, and like any study, they can provide numbers, and you can either discount it or you can think that maybe there's some truth to it. And part of the science of when people look at the downtown and they look at pedestrian behavior and what can either hurt a downtown or what can strengthen a downtown, they'll talk about the missing tooth problem. The missing tooth problem is if you tear buildings down in your downtown and you have empty lots. Pedestrians are less likely to walk past empty lots. Now, do some of them? Yes. But what studies show is that it does have an impact on pedestrian activity. So if you look at the parking lot that was built next to Oscars, I think the arches look great. That may have been the reason they built it that way. But from a technical perspective, it was also a very intelligent development as well, because that creates a sense that there's still a built environment. So for a pedestrian behavior, it encourages people to continue walking. When you look at banners and you look at different parts of town, you would probably look at your banners in different ways, depending on how the town is going to be used. So if you look out west, and I'm talking west of ASU campus, and you go to all those commercial areas that the city is still supportive of, it's just because we talk about downtown or the central business district doesn't mean we don't support our other businesses. That pedestrian experience is extremely different than if you're walking in some of the other commercial areas. When you look at the central business district here, that's this orange, and people were to talk about maybe wanting to expand that. And again, I've already addressed what the parking implications are and some of those other code issues are, but when you expand it, I think there's businesses that are to the east, to the west, that could make an argument that they should be included as well. But when you walk that, part of what the consultant has brought to our attention is when you're walking this, we probably have our existing central business district too big, because you can get towards Big John's furniture store and it's a completely different environment from a pedestrian perspective, and how parking is handled and those types of things. And so there's a lot that goes into how these designations are made. But I think the other part that I think is so valuable from this comp plan discussion is that some of these concepts, it's the first time we're processing it in this way. And my point is this: we can give categories and titles to these areas of town, but that doesn't make any one more important or less important than the others. The point of looking at what the land use is, what the development is, and what the future may need to be for these areas is recognizing what's there and how to strengthen what's there. So if you treat one area that is a completely different built environment like a different area, you're not necessarily giving them the support and the assistance that those different areas need. So when you look at the central business district and what those needs may be entirely different than what some of the businesses that are in some of these other areas. Part of that is not because there's not people going to it, but it's because of who's the majority of people that are going to be going to it. So some of the areas and businesses that are served here, there's some distinct differences between that and the central business district. The first one is in some of the parking lots for the central business district, someone will park and hopefully walk the extent of the central business district. You can put the exact same streetscape, you can put the exact same banners, you can do everything the exact same way and try to build it downstate. That's not going to change pedestrian behavior. The people are probably not going to park in the central business district, walk over the railroad tracks, walk back past industrial uses and some of that empty lots, and treat it from a pedestrian experience as if it's the same thing. That you can make it look the same, it's not necessarily going to impact the pedestrian behavior because of how the built environment is that you're connecting. Now, does that mean we should not be taking a look at State Street? Because yes, it is an entrance. It is a gateway. And part of what the comp plan is looking at is all of our gateways and how do we need to address those gateways to present Alamosa in the best way we can. So by this discussion of it needs to be part of the downtown, it needs to be part of the downtown, I feel like we're missing critical factors in regards to what the needs really are for some of the different areas. When we talk the needs for central business district, that doesn't mean there's not other needs for other commercial areas, for other residential areas, for other mixed use areas. They have needs, and they have very specific needs. When you look at mixed use residential areas, a lot of what can be visiting those businesses in the area are somewhat neighborhood focused. It can be your neighborhood grocery store. And so what you need to make sure is in place for those areas are sidewalks, bike lanes, safety, the lights, those types of things, so that residents in that surrounding area feel comfortable. You need to make sure that they have parking for those who are coming from outside the neighborhood. So there's those types of things. Is there other ways to enhance those types of uses and the connectivity that they have in the neighborhood in the different areas? So I think sometimes we can get focused on you have to be categorized as one thing in order to get attention, and I don't think that's ever been the intention of the language that we've been trying to use. It's that we want to help each area be successful with how it is or what it could be, and if we apply the same thing to everywhere, we're partially ignoring some pretty significant studies, and we may not be making the best use of our resources, which are fairly limited. And I just wanted to take this time to highlight that we do have many different areas within the community. And so this one, for example, right here is categorized as the historic town site residential. And again, these are drafts that the consultant has been trying to put out to the public to get input and to find out. These residential areas are different than other parts of the community because, one, they're a little bit more historic. The setbacks are a little bit different. They also are more on a grid pattern, which means you have different behavior of the neighborhood based on the design of the streets than you have in some of your other community areas that are either dead ends or they circle or they do those types of things. They also, by location, are very close to your downtown area. And this time I am using downtown as a bigger thing. I'm not using central business district. So these feed into the businesses that are located more in the downtown area. So they're very critical locations. They also feed into our university where you could see faculty housing and those types of things. And so I'm going to scroll up. The other areas that you have for residential are in these yellow, and you can see they don't necessarily have the same grid. You have different vehicular behavior, different pedestrian behavior in these areas, and they may need different focus and different assistance from the city in order to help them be successful. Looking at this map, you can see you have a lot of commercial out on the west. The pedestrian behavior, given that this is a state highway with significant speeds, is very different. This isn't something that you would do the same streetscape as what you're going to do in your central business district because the use of pedestrians is going to be very different. Now, do we need to make sure that we have ways to cross safely and to access different parts? Very much so. But that's different than when you're talking about streetscape. And so again, and I want to come back on this map as far as our gateways. You have 285. Over here, you have both entrances with the 160 and then state with the airport. Those all deserve wayfinding that's appropriate for the people who are using it, and they deserve certain curb appeal, different types of streetscape in order to enhance the experience as a gateway. And those are all needed. I essentially just wanted to explain that. I think some of you were able to attend some of the comp plan, and this was presented. They're continuing to finesse this. Some areas, pedestrian activity is more important. Other areas, it's not as important. Bike lanes might be more important. Those types of things. And they were testing ideas. Those areas that have alleys, they were testing, should we be using the alleyways a little bit different? And what does the community think about that? What do we think about these open properties that are undeveloped but on very critical arterials within the city, and what should those developments look like? And so I just, a lot of times when you get in these debates, it can start to feel as he gets something she doesn't, or she gets something he doesn't, those types of things. That's not what the intent is of these categorizations. It's to take a look at actual planning techniques that are based on studies and to make the best use of resources when we have limited resources. And you can't, by applying the same thing to the different areas, you won't necessarily achieve what some people would hope to achieve. And I just wanted to provide a little bit of information to help council understand that.
Thank you, Heather. That was in depth. I enjoyed that presentation. I really did. It's heartwarming to know that you're on top of this comprehensive plan information. Thank you. Councilor Grego.
I appreciate how you addressed it and stuff, because there is concern out there in various parts of our community where they feel that they're being left out, And I also agree with Councilman Vigil. This community should not be divided south side, north side. It's the city of Alamosa. And whatever we can do in particular areas to hop out, we should do it, But I appreciate your explanation, and I hope people understand that, because some people do feel like they're paying more attention here, they're doing this and that, and that's not the case, So thank you, Heather.
Councilor Vihil.
Thank you, Mayor. I know this is a working document and study, and
Yes, sir.
so when will we have an opportunity as a council to have our input on this? And
Well, absolutely. So, one, you can attend any of the meetings and at least kind of hear what's going on and all of that. It's up to you if you want to participate or not for that part. But the formal process, well, we had a little bit also in regards to, I think we did a work session with council, and that one was just kind of to start talking about what does an update to the comp plan even look like. We're going to have another work session with council to look at preliminary stuff. And then the formal process, it actually starts with P&Z. And if they want to review it, we'll have a public meeting, all of that, and then it will be coming to council as well.
thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor. Heather, I too would like to thank you for your in-depth, detailed and explanation. I also want to thank you for acknowledging that State Street is a gateway to our community, and that area will be noticed in the comp plan as we move forward. And we will continue to do things on State Street to beautify it as we move forward. Thank you for that.
And if I could just add a little bit more, one of the groups that was referenced is our Water Smarts group, which is a group of volunteers. And how far we've gotten it is this, in that we printed aerials off of all the gateways and then all the city-owned property and all of ASU property. And the purpose of the Water Smarts team has actually been multifaceted. The first one is, if we look at these property that we have control over, are we using water the most effective given the situation that we're in? Or is there different types of landscaping that we should look at that, one, is still affordable, can be maintained, because we don't want to be planting something that then gets overgrown and we're not maintaining, can be maintained, is water smart, and then we're combining it with deer smart as well. So we're trying to tackle some of those items. And I can guarantee you part of the stuff we printed out was the gateways, including State Street, all the way from the airport to the downtown. And so how do we do that, and what's the vegetation and those types of things has been part of the discussion that group's looking at. If you can imagine all the city-owned property, all the right-of-way that's considered a gateway, that adds up to a lot of property, which is why we haven't made any recommendations yet, because we've been trying to prioritize, okay, what is going to be the look and feel? And it's not necessarily, I don't want you to say, well, you're contradicting yourself. We're not necessarily going to have just one type of rock in the whole city. But maybe we should coordinate where our property's next to ASU to maybe have something that works well together and is appealing. And maybe the areas that are somewhat connected at least are not disjointed and do make some sense in regards to what that design is and what that landscaping is. And so some of that is what that water team, we actually have not met in 3 months, because with the comp plan increasing, it's been a little busy. So, but what we're trying to do is we gave all of those plans to the comp plan, because the consultant, because we don't want to have people working on very similar things. But I can assure you State Street was one of those entryways, gateways, that was addressed in regards to needing improvement, because it's a gateway including signage, vegetation, and those types of things.
Thank you, Heather. Are there any other comments or questions of our city manager? Seeing none, we'll move on to committee reports. Who has a committee report? Councilor Vihil.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. Last week, I attended a meeting with the library board. Just a quick update, we've decided that next March, throughout the month, we're going to be celebrating the 115th anniversary of the library. It's been here for 115 years. It started out, we got a primary document of a newspaper from that time, and it said, well, the first library was a reading room. It had like one chair with 2 or 3 books, and that's how our library started off, so I thought that was pretty neat. We're going to be meeting a lot over the next 2 or 3 months to iron out details and and that type of stuff. What it's going to look like is every weekend or once a week. We haven't ironed that out yet, but we're going to have different events and different presentations, maybe a history of Alamosa, a history of the library, the services that the library can provide, that type of stuff. So it'll be pretty neat, and I'm sure, I know we want to invite the council, we want to invite the county because they weren't part of the library as well, former library board members and that type of stuff. So it'll be a pretty neat event. I'll have more ironed out details for you all at the next meeting. So just know that in March, we're going to be asked to be going to the library to celebrate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Vigil. Councilor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two committee reports. One of them, the report is on the San Luis Valley Development Resource Group. Michael Wisdom is stepping down as the executive director for the San Luis Valley Development Resource Group, and the San Luis Valley Development Resource Group is in the process of interviewing and taking applications from candidates over the next month or so until we find a qualified candidate to fill that position. In regards to Alamosa Housing Authority, I attended that meeting today, and Mayor, they wanted me to let you know that David Carson has resigned effective yesterday, and that's going to cause you to have to appoint someone else for that position on the board. Also, the good news is with the Alamosa Housing Authority is that they have no vacancies whatsoever at this particular time. And they do have a waiting list, but the shortest waiting lists are for the units that have 3 bedrooms. So if anyone's interested in applying and they're looking for the 3 bedrooms, there are only 3 people on that waiting list. So that's what I have right now. In regards to the San Luis Valley Development Resource Group, right now we are trying to figure out what the process is going to be in regards to the interview process when it comes to selecting a candidate for that position for Mike Wisdom. We are going to reach out to some other community members as well as members of the COG and some possible county officials as well, since that position will have to collaborate with different entities throughout the valley. So an email will probably be going out, if not the end of this week, beginning of the next week, going over some of the processes that we're trying to put in place.
Mayor, I had a
Thank you,
question
Councilor
for
Coleman.
Mr. Coleman.
Councilor Grego.
These other responsibilities that Mike has, what happens there? Wasn't he involved with COG, and then he was involved with this other, I was trying to remember.
That's a good question, Councilor Griego.
He'll still continue those, or is that something that?
Well, Mike is still going to be a partner and work with the SLV DRG in some capacity, but a very limited capacity.
Okay.
So he will do certain things, but not the duties that an executive director is required to do. He will be completely removed from those duties and responsibilities. So that's why we're seeking applications to take over the majority of the efforts that Mike used to perform. Well, he's still performing them until the end of this month.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And of course, I don't know if we all know, but Ronnie Wisdom has also taken a position in Rio Grande County, so she is not the director of council of governments anymore. They're looking for someone as well. So big changes in
They've
that
identified a young lady
Have
too.
they?
Yes, sir.
Right.
And she's been working there a couple weeks now, and she's getting training with Ronnie. Once again, Ronnie did so many things, and she was very effective and productive in so many areas, so it was kind of hard. But they did find someone to fill that position. The board, being a board member, really wasn't the ones who were responsible for filling that position. That was Mike and Ronnie's responsibility to fill that position, and they filled that position. But the actual board of the San Luis Valley Development Resource Group, they are responsible for filling Mike's executive director position.
Thank you, Councilor Coleman.
Mayor, one more comment on both of these individuals. They've done a lot of great stuff for our community, and I've had an opportunity to be with them all the way through their whole tenure here. So I don't know if they're going to have anything for them, but it needs to be recognized that they have done a lot of stuff, Ronnie and Mike, for this community, not only for this community, but the whole San Luis Valley and stuff. So
Thank you, Councilman Grego, and I'm just going to comment. We are in the process of trying to figure out how to acknowledge them at the end of their tenure, and I will keep council updated with that process as well. But yes, they've done a great job throughout the San Luis Valley for many years, and time has come for them to do other things in their career, and they're excited about it. And we encourage them and wish them much success in their continued efforts in the direction that they're going, because their family has done a lot and committed a lot to the Alamosa and the San Luis Valley as a whole. You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, it may be something we can discuss as far as honoring them, possibly with certificates of achievement if council is so wishes. I can visit with Holly and start that process if it's all right with you folks. All right. Are there any other committee reports? Move on to staff announcements. Ms. Heather?
Thank you, Mayor. On your calendar, I want to remind you, we did make some changes to your schedule this past week to better line up our discussions regarding marijuana when we anticipate getting the potential petition in front of us. So we do now have a work session scheduled for next Wednesday, August 10th, starting at 5:30, followed by a special council meeting. There will only be items related to the marijuana on that council meeting. So it's not going to be a full-blown meeting, but it is a it is a meeting where it'll be properly noticed and you would be able to vote. That allows us to have the first reading for the IGA with the county and some of those other election items, should it appear that that ballot is going to be sufficient. Ms. Hobbs does have until that Monday morning at 8 a.m. to submit that, which means the city clerk probably will not be able to get through the entire thing, but hopefully by Wednesday she might be able to share with us that she's about halfway and so far the signatures are looking pretty good, or she could say she's about halfway and a lot of them are being disqualified. So we might be able to have a little bit of a fill by then, but it's doubtful she'll be able to certify all the signatures in a 2.5 day time frame and still do her normal duties. So we do have that coming up next week, and then just a reminder for the meeting after that, we still have scheduled a work session, but it is at 6, so we should have a little bit more time to eat, for the council policy manual. And what we've been doing is taking some of the feedback that we heard at the retreat, making those changes, and then just bringing that draft back for your review and input. So those are some of the upcoming meetings. Since the last meeting I attended, I wanted to provide a thank you for our employee team who helped coordinate the employee barbecue. I think the setting out at the golf course, with it being informal, people bringing their families, the things for the kids, I think it's a great environment, and the prizes for employees. And so that was completely put on by an employee team, and they really, really work hard to try to find out what employees want to see and make changes every year. And so I just want to thank that team. I also want to thank our staff who worked on the City Services Fair, especially those like Heinz who had the hot jobs of grilling in the heat. But I think you had a little bit of shade, maybe. But there's work that goes into that, but I think it's a great opportunity to interact with the community, show them the different equipment that we use, provide some hot dogs in a very comfortable environment. But I would like to just thank staff for that. Council may have been aware there was a presentation from the state demographer on demography and the economy, and I'm not going to go over the whole presentation because it is late, but there's 2 key things that he discussed in regards to rural communities trying to attract residents: broadband and daycare. So broadband's not new, and really daycare's not that new either. It's been coming up a lot in regards to rural philanthropy days, and also some of the discussions we've had for the comp plan. And so just some of these things are beginning to reiterate the same information. I was fortunate last week to be able to attend the IEDC Entrepreneurial and Small Business Development Strategies. And what I really appreciated by this, they talked a lot about how can communities attract entrepreneurs, how can you support them, how can you create the right culture for that. And they talked about how rural communities face unique challenges. And so I think it's very important as we look at what the economy going forward is going to look like. One of the things they talked about is, yes, manufacturing is still important. It's primary jobs, it's those types of things. But manufacturing as we define it now is so dramatically different than the big automakers era when you had manufacturing. You've got technology, you've got innovation. All of that is dramatically changing it, and it changes it to where it needs less people, if you really think about it. What they talk about from an economics perspective is it's innovation that's going to be the next economy, and how you can capitalize and prepare your city to attract the people that are going to be on the cutting edge for innovation is critical. And one of the stats that they provided is they said usually it's the metro areas that come up with the big like Google or Uber, or that big thing that's so dramatically different. That's usually occurring in metro areas, but proportionally, the changes to that technology, 80-some% of it is in rural areas. The enhancements to that technology, which I found fascinating. The thing they talked about from a rural perspective that they said you really need to be careful from a climate is if someone takes a risk as an entrepreneur and they fail, if you're in the metro area, you can go to the supermarket and nobody knows. If you're in a small town and your business has failed, everybody knows that. And it feels very uncomfortable. And what their point was is if you're going to have a climate that accepts risk, that accepts innovation, you're going to have to accept failure as well. And you have to take a look at that, and as a rural community, be very careful with it. So I think there was a lot of good lessons. Bonnie and Marty Asplin were there, as well as Andrea Oaks Harmio and Randy Wright. So the Valley was very well represented in those discussions. The animal shelter is moving forward. We've met with the county. Unfortunately, they are busier than they anticipated, so they won't be able to do any in-kind work, which means we're going to be contracting out more than we anticipated. The costs are still expected to be fine and within the parameters that we shared with council. We just won't be doing as much in-house as what we anticipated would have been possible, but that is moving forward. We have met with East Alamosa to let them know where we are with our water. They still have not made a decision on if they plan to maybe contract with a sub-district or to do an augmentation plan. They're still reviewing stuff, but we wanted to make sure they at least knew where we were and how quickly some things are moving and not moving, and those types of things, because if it is something they wanted to partner with us on, we didn't want them to miss an opportunity. So we did have a meeting with them. We do have a golf partnership meeting on Monday. I know with the changes in the restaurant and all of those types of things, it should probably be an interesting meeting to see where they are. We'll probably look at the financials and have some discussions related to that and what their plans are in regards to that. We had an interesting article in the newspaper, a letter in regards to government giving themselves raises, and it wasn't a very specifically worded thing, so I wanted to take this opportunity to make it clear that it's not all government, that clearly the city council cannot give itself a raise. That is something that the voters per our charter would have to provide, and I just want to make sure that that's clear, because sometimes it's easy to group all government together, and that's not necessarily the case. The city council hasn't even discussed anything related to a 30% raise, let alone would you guys have been able to do that without a vote of the people. So just wanted to add some...
Now, Heather, that would be an interesting discussion.
That would be a very interesting. So I just wanted to add some clarity to that, to make sure people understood the difference there. And then regarding the comp plan, the week of August 22nd, we're going to have some significant outreach again. Some of it is going to be at Zapata Park. We're hoping to also have another location in a church. maybe some other locations, and then also one that's focused on discussing the central business district and some of those needs as well. So there's going to be significant outreach for the comp plan on the 22nd. And then the last item I wanted to share is a little bit more significant, and it's something that just came to staff's attention today. I don't think it's been fully vetted, and so I need to be very careful with how I word this because there could be some changes, and I want to make sure that I'm not communicating anything as if it's been a final decision. But Sheriff Jackson verbally shared with us today that beginning September 1st, they may no longer accept municipal inmates. So this would actually, it's quite surprising. We all know the challenges that the jail's been facing, the overcrowding, the staffing, just the facility issues in and of itself and those types of things. But I don't think we were necessarily anticipating this. Chief Oaks has shared with me, because my discussion with the sheriff was fairly brief. I think Chief Oaks has been able to have a little bit more of a discussion with them. The reasoning provided for this is just the jail overcrowding, challenges of transporting inmates to alternate jail facilities, and staff safety. They're not going to accept municipal offenders sentenced to jail, municipal charges, and municipal warrants. They have indicated, though, that this may only be temporary. I'm not sure what temporary means. Sheriff Jackson has advised that the issue's on the agenda for the next county commissioner meeting, and so far that it's his impression that they will approve this action. That meeting is August 10th, and the Chief Oaks is planning to attend. They provided us with some jail numbers and those types of things. This information was shared with us actually while we were having our staff meeting. So Holly and Eric and the chief are all looking at different parts of this in regards to the legality of it, the cost of it, the numbers, those types of things. So this is very fresh. I'm not sure if there's going to be continued discussions at the commissioner council level. I'm not sure, whose roles people have and those types of things. So it's something we're still processing. I think for tonight, I'd recommend from council if I could have 2 counselors appointed, should we need to have some meetings between now and the next time we have a meeting, to have discussions with any commissioners or the sheriff or something like that, because this is clearly, staff can take a look at the information and look at alternatives and impacts and those types of things, but this is something that's beyond the staff level very clearly. And so it's stuff we're still processing. It's stuff that could change. It could be that the sheriff looks at different information and decides that that's not the recommendation he wants to make. I have no idea. It's something that seems to be unfolding as we look at this. So if you could give me the names of 2 people who would probably be interested if we need to have those discussions, I think that would be helpful. And then obviously we'll provide updates as we get them and those types of things. I would like to say this emphasizes the importance of us receiving the JAG grant and the contract you approved tonight that allows some of the day reporting. It by no means solves the entire population we have that uses the jail, but it at least has us have some of the pieces in place that can help alleviate this while we try to figure out some of the other items. So.
Mayor, I had a comment, if I may.
Councilor Grego.
So you're saying that our judge sentenced somebody to jail, they're not going to accept him,
That's correct.
even though we've been paying for those?
That's correct.
Well, do they forget that we're part of the county? The city of Alamosa is part of the county. It's not, we're not an island here. We're county residents. I think that's wrong. And we're paying. When we send somebody from our courts, we pay. It's not like they're there for free. The city's paying for that.
Yes, sir.
We're probably the only ones that are paying.
I don't know the breakdown on their numbers.
Councilor Grego, would you like to volunteer for this?
I would volunteer.
Okay. We've got one, Heather.
I think you have 7.
And it looks like we're all volunteering. We'll be there on the 10th.
Well, you guys can show up on the 10th, but in regards to any conversations,
no, I
I'd like to be
understand that.
compliant with sunshine.
I have Councilor Grego. Who else was interested? Yeah, shall we draw lots? I'm not sure what we can do here. Councilor Daniel?
So I just also wanted to say, one of the concerns, I think, are the municipal violations. So it's not that the jail is like, he wants to really be a felony-only jail. And so I think that there are some challenges with what is going on. I think there are also some challenges with a full understanding at the county level of what we go through as a city and what that means if we can't jail people. I think it may also require us, as we're looking at how we prosecute people and how we cite people, because if there's a different way to do that, then maybe we should, so I think there are some other conversations that can come out of this. In addition, there are a lot of other municipal challenges, I think, that impact the jail that the sheriff isn't fully taking into consideration. Is this his proposal to the county, or is it the county proposing back to the sheriff?
My impression is that it's his proposal to the
That's what I
county,
think, too.
and the chief is nodding affirmative.
I think so,
I
too.
understand. Obviously, it's going to present challenges for us. Councilor Coleman?
I have a comment, but I think I'm.
Okay, well, we're still on staff announcements.
I saved the best for last, Mayor.
Oh,
so
absolutely,
that
Heather,
was
please.
it. That was the biggest. I thought it would be hard to pay attention to anything else I said after that, so.
Can I ask a legal question? So should this discussion involve local organizations that deal with offenders? Would it be open to the public? And if I were to participate as my regular job, sunshine law would be in effect, correct? Because of my role as city council?
Well, your role as city council only applies to city council meetings. So the sunshine law is in effect with respect to, that's why Heather wanted 2 people to meet with, because as soon as you have more than 2, you've got to have a publicly noticed meeting,
Right.
which.
So if my job at.
You're never not a council meeting.
Right.
So if I have 2 council members and you're there as well, I can't say you're not a council member.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood that.
Did I
question.
answer it correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, since she can participate as the director of,
But I can't if there are 2.
She cannot. I can only have 2 council members regardless of what role.
she plays.
Correct.
Well, I'm going to pull rank and I'll volunteer myself. Councilor Grego, it's you and me and Heather. Is that all right?
And staff, let's move.
And staff. Thank you very much.
That's all.
Okay. Now we'll move on, sir.
You guys can decide how you're going to do that.
That's fine.
If you want me, we can have more. I just need to make sure I do 24-hour posting and notices
Okay.
and
Is anyone
that
else
kind of
interested?
stuff.
What I like
And
about
minutes.
Councilor Daniels is that she's really informed with the overall process, and I think she would be a great addition for the city to be a representative because she knows about the overall process, and that's just my comment.
You know what, Councilor Coleman, I totally agree with you. I'll just step down and we'll just allow her to, if nobody else is interested. We okay? Are we okay with Councilor Grego and Councilor Daniel and staff? Okay, now we can move on to the biggest and best, Heather.
That was it, sir.
That was it?
That was it.
Okay, thank you. Any other staff announcements? No. We'll move on to council comment. Who has a comment? Councilor Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 things. The first is a, how do you say this? Just my thoughts and prayers with the Dunn family for Mary Ann Dunn. She was a great friend of my family and my wife. They worked together at Sacred Heart. She was a champion for social justice and the poor and those folks, and her spirit will live on in town as she affected so many people. The second thing I want to talk about is Ruthie Brown's comments and that, and I don't even know how to approach this or whatever, but she mentioned in her first opening remarks about passion, and I think we need to really recognize that this lady does have a true passion for our town and its image. And we always talk about what business and getting people to stop here in town and that type of stuff. And the image of our town is probably one of the most important things to help that. And so I would like to see, and yes, I went on a tour, and she showed me different things, and by no way am I trying to attack the staff or anything like that, but just I want to know, like, where's our money being spent in terms of landscaping, and is there a budget on that, and can we see? And then another thing that comes to mind is the folks who work, the temp work during the summer, who help with the flowers or this and those garden beds and that. Are they properly trained? Do they really know what they're doing? Do they know what they're, because I know they're young folks, and are they getting training for different things and that type of stuff? So I hope that we as a council don't just brush this aside. I hope that we take the comments that she gave us earlier to heart and try to work on this a little bit, because I think we need to see where she's coming from, and her heart is in the right place. Okay, her heart is in the right place, and that's what I got to say on Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Councilor Verheul. Councilor Daniel?
Thank you. I have a few comments as well. I just wanted to say I appreciated Parks and Rec. The softball season went very well, not just because our team won, but that helps. But no, it went very well, and I think the umpires did very well this season and things like that, so thank you. And that the City Services Fair, that was the first time I'd ever been there, and it was great. And the hot dogs were very well cooked, so you did a great job there. And then I did want to say thank you to Ruthie. I spent last Thursday morning driving around with her in her car, and not just as a council person did I stop and think, but I stopped and thought about what I don't look at in our town, and what my weeds look like in my yard, and with my clover, which I didn't know was a weed until Thursday. But I also, the part that made me disappointed in myself, and I will just speak for me, was that I hadn't seen those things. I hadn't seen the things that Ruthie looks at every day and that her Operation Pride Club worked on every day. And so where I am disappointed, because it's always hard to hear that kind of feedback, I'm also so very appreciative of the time that you spent with us and the things that you shared with us today. And it gives me something to be more thoughtful and intentional about. And I agree with Councilor Verheul about let's look at some things differently, and let's capitalize on the passion you have and the care that you have for this community, because I think it's an amazing asset that we have, that sometimes I think gets overlooked because sometimes you are a little tough, and that's okay. I like it when you're tough, when it's not directed just at me. But I think that, you know, when we're looking at what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, your voice is going to be one that I hear consistently. So I appreciate that. The other thing that I have been thinking about in my heart as a council person and as a community member is this proclamation deal. I would like us to readdress that as a council. I know we've talked about putting it on a work session. I feel like we are a small enough city that we can recognize individuals differently than we have been. And I think that's something that needs to be looked at by us. I think it's a very important thing to make people feel like they're valued in our community. So thank you.
Councilor Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor. I too would like to express my sympathy for Mary Ann Dunn. She was a good county commissioner, represented the area very well, and she will be missed. I also just wanted to let everyone know that we lost another great community member who participated in a lot of community events, and Phil Ray Jack, who worked with the Valley Courier. He passed away, and I believe they're having services for him this week. But Phil Ray, the thing about him is he was a good volunteer in the community. He cared for people, and he was open to different points of views as well. So he will be truly missed. I will miss his articles in the paper as well. So just want his family to know that he's in our thoughts and prayers as well.
Councilor Griego.
I too would like to echo Daniel's and Verheul's comments about Ruthie. She does care about this community. But by the same token, we're all in this together, and we need to work together to make this community better. I know the parks and recreation, that's not the only thing they do, you know, and I know sometimes when we hire people, they don't really do what they're supposed to be doing, and they do it wrong. But I think if we come together and work together, we'll have that beautiful community that you talk about, Ruthie, you know. But it takes everybody. It takes a partnership of everybody coming together to make this work. Not Parks and Recs by themselves, not Ruthie by herself, but everybody coming together and saying, hey, this is our community. What do we want it to look like? Let's work it together. So that's bottom line. We need to come together and work together. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Stefano.
I also want to thank Ruthie. At first, when I first met Ruthie, she was really abrasive to me. And I got to know her a little bit more, and she's got a heart for this community. We've shared a couple of times on talking about different stuff. She's in my ward, and not because she's in my ward, but she is a powerful voice, I think, in the community. So I commend you. And also, I just want to state that I missed Mary Ann Dunn's funeral, and it wasn't, I wish I would have gone because my car got hammered in that hailstorm in Colorado Springs. So that's why I couldn't make the funeral, because my windshield was out, my back window was out, my car just $17,000 worth of damage. It was a hailstorm I ain't never seen. So I kind of regret, but my respects are with her. Thank you.
Okay, and my comment is also to Ruthie. Ruthie, sometimes you're the conscience for the community. I respect that. I really do. There are a lot of things that we all can improve on, and that goes for the mayor. There are things that I can improve on as well as a human being and as a community leader, and sometimes it's a learning process for each and every one of us up here. But when we have folks like you out in the community who come to the city council meetings and sit there and voice their opinions, it becomes a better community all around. And please understand that we are listening. We listen. There are sometimes that we can't do everything the folks in our community want us to do, but we're listening and analyzing and trying to figure out the best way to do things for the benefit of everyone. And so I'll go along with council in that Mary Ann Dunn was an extremely wonderful person. I knew her for many, many years, her and Noel and the family. But there are also other great people, and I hate to open that Valley Courier. I really do, because every time I open to the obituaries, it's like 2 pages long now, Ruth. I'm sorry, John Marvel and Carter and just a whole lot of wonderful people that have passed on. But yeah, it's a wonderful job we have here, folks, and I enjoy working with each and every one of you and anyone that comes to council, especially staff as well. And so with that, that's my comment. So we've got 2 executive sessions lined up this evening. We've got executive sessions for personnel matters, and the chair will entertain a motion on both.
Mayor, I so move that we move into executive session pursuant to CRS 24-64024F for personnel matters for the evaluation of the city attorney and the city manager.
I second.
I've got a motion and a second on the executive sessions. Is there any further discussion?
One comment on the second pursuant there.
Councilor Grego?
I'm sorry, Mayor. On the second pursuant, there's different numbers there. They're supposed to be the same numbers?
That's a typo. They're both the same number.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Start voting, please. Holly?
The motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. And after our executive sessions, Ruth, we will come back into regular session and there will be no further business discussed. Thank you.